Chapter 580. Haha, in that case Bai Yi, I'll leave the important task of taking down Xiao Yan to you. You can't fail. Bai Ying solemnly looked at Bai Yi. His expression was extremely serious. Hearing this, Bai Ye's heart could not help but tighten. Even his expression changed slightly. He had never thought that his family's family head would agree to Sun Shua's decision. From Bai Ye's understanding of Bai Ying, his family's family head was not the kind of person who was willing to take a loss. After all, this was the Sun family's territory. If the Sun family went back on their word, the Bai family would not be able to explain themselves. At the same time, Sun Shua, who was behind Bai Ying, looked at Bai Ying, who had his back to him, and a trace of suspicion appeared on his face. Bai Ying had fought with his Sun family for many years. Sun Shua understood the latter's temperament very well. The person in front of him was not someone who was willing to suffer a loss. Once he set his eyes on a prey, even if he could not kill it, he would not be satisfied until he tore off a piece of flesh. However, Bai Ying had actually said such words in front of him. This made him feel suspicious. At the same time, Bai Yi, who was standing in front of Bai Ying, was about to speak with a hesitant expression. However, Bai Ying spoke again with a grave expression. Bai Yi, only you can take on this matter. This matter concerns the face of our Bai family. Do you want to refuse? If you refuse, this Sun guy will gain prestige. Won't he laugh at our Bai family for having no one? After Bai Ying spoke, Bai Yi lowered his head with a solemn expression. He could only helplessly nod at Bai Ying. After all, this was the family head's decision. He had no right to change it, nor did he have the right to refute it. Seeing this, Bai Ying nodded with a smile. However, Bai Yi, who had lowered his head, did not notice that at this moment, there was a flash of light in the depths of Bai Ying's eyes. But Patriarch, this is the Sun family's territory. He has the advantage of numbers. If Sun Shua sends more people, wouldn't we be at a disadvantage as well? After a moment of hesitation, Bai Yi raised his head. At the same time, the expression on Bai Ying's face quickly returned to normal. He smiled slightly and said to Bai Yi in a voice that only the two of them could hear, "Young Master Bai, oh Bai Yi, while what you said is correct, do you think that since it's something that you can think of I can't think of it?" Hearing this, Bai Yi came back to his senses. At the same time, the expression on his face quickly changed. He quickly bowed and apologized to Bai Ying, saying, "Please forgive me. This subordinate is slow-witted. I have absolutely no intention of belittling the Patriarch. Haha, it's fine. I know you're doing this for the good of the clan, so..." Before he could finish speaking, Bai Ying suddenly turned around and looked at Sun Shua. His eyes narrowed as he spoke to Sun Shua in a serious tone. He narrowed his eyes and said, "However, Patriarch's son, I think that before that, there is something that needs to be explained to you." Sun Shua raised his eyebrows. He knew what Bai Ying wanted to say, but he pretended not to know. He chuckled and asked with a look of knowing the answer. He laughed and said, "Hee hee, I wonder if Patriarch Bai has any questions?" "Humph. Only Bai Yi and I are here in my Bai family. If I don't do anything, he will be the only one. Therefore, if your Sun family sends people, it is reasonable. You can't blame me for not having anyone in your Bai family. This is my Sun family. As long as I want to, I can send as many people as I want. If Patriarch Bai has the ability, I will not stop you." Before Bai Ying could finish speaking, Sun Shua coldly snorted and interrupted him with a sneer. "You!" Immediately, fury surged onto Bai Ying's face. His originally amiable expression suddenly became somewhat distorted and ferocious at this moment. His hands, which had extended out of his sleeves, trembled violently. His eyes were practically spitting flames of fury. Upon seeing this, Sun Shua coldly chuckled. The corners of his mouth lifted, revealing a cold smile. After which, he suddenly waved his large hand. His sleeves fluttered, emitting a fluttering sound. A formless wind also swept across the courtyard. "Everyone in my Sun family, listen up. From now on, all 9-star half-emperors are to go to the Four Directions Pavilion and capture that rank 3 alchemist, Xiao Yan. Whoever can capture him, I'll reward him with a tier 3 medicinal pill. No 2. Sun Shua's loud shout rang out. Instantly, the entire Coldstream city seemed to have been struck by lightning. Sun Shua's words exploded in the ears of everyone in the city. In the blink of an eye, the hearts of everyone in the city were deeply shaken by Sun Shua's words. From Sun Shua's words, it was clear that Xiao Yan, who was listed as the most wanted person by the four great sects, was actually in their Cold Stream city. Furthermore, it seemed like Xiao Yan was currently in the Four Directions Pavilion in the city. Immediately, greed rose in the hearts of all the half-martial emperors in the city. They were also extremely interested in the reward offered by the four large sections. It was just that they were helpless in being unable to find Xiao Yan. Since he had already appeared in this place, how could everyone in the city easily miss this opportunity to capture him? In the blink of an eye, not only did the Sun family's 9-star half-emperors move, the experts from all over the city also moved upon hearing the news. At this moment, Xiao Yan was in the Four Directions Pavilion. This was something that Sun Shua had personally said. It could not be false. Within a short span of a few breaths, the enormous Cold Stream city had swiftly descended into chaos because of the words that had come out of Sun Shua's mouth. Of course, it could also be said to be chaotic. However, it could also be said to be orderly. Everyone in the city had the same goal, and they were all gathering in the same direction in the city. If this scene were to be seen from high up in the sky, it could be described as grand. Countless experts surged out the Do Chi within their bodies. Numerous Do Chi light pillars shot straight to the 9 heavens. Immediately, everyone's bodies moved. One after another, they flickered, leaving behind numerous brilliant afterimages in the sky. Tens of thousands of people did the same thing as they swiftly gathered at the same spot in the city. If one were to look at this scene from high up in the sky, it would appear as though countless fireflies were being sucked in by something. As they crazily surged in, the light at the very center gradually became brighter and brighter. At the same time, Sun Hua, who was originally standing respectfully in front of Xiao Yan in the four pavilions, had shock written all over his face at this moment. When Sun Shua's words were transmitted from his mouth, the original thoughts in Sun Hua's heart were shattered like a cluster of fog. Disbelief filled his heart. No matter what, he would never have imagined that the rank 3 alchemist in front of him, who could bring him to a higher position, was actually Xiao Yan, whom the four great sects wanted to join hands to eliminate. You are. How is this possible? Sun Hua's face was filled with shock as he looked at Xiao Yan in front of him. His eyes swiftly turned crimson. His skinny body trembled intensely at this moment. His finger slowly pointed at Xiao Yan. The reward that Sun Shua gave might be tempting to an ordinary person, but Sun Hua was completely unmoved. If the person in front of him was not Xiao Yan, the Tier 3 medicinal pill that he would be able to obtain would be far more than what Sun Shua had promised. However, now, everything had turned into bubbles. Xiao Yan parted his mouth and smiled. His smile contained ridicule and disdain. Yes, the person that your clan head is referring to is me, Xiao Yan. Chapter 581. Xiao Yan. Sun Hua's body trembled intensely within the four-way building. The words in his mouth appeared to have been forcefully squeezed out from between his teeth. It sounded as though it was filled with fury while suppressing the sorrow in his heart. Puff! When the fury in his chest burned to its limit, the powerful Do Chi within Sun Hua's body suddenly erupted. At the same time, the fury in his chest transformed into an endless killing intent. Die! Since I am unable to obtain anything, I will kill you today. Today, the old me will tear you into 10,000 pieces. A hoarse cry was emitted from Sun Hua's mouth like a beast's roar. Sun Hua's grimacing appearance appeared especially terrifying. Ha! Sun Hua's body suddenly shot forward with a hoarse, furious roar. He was just like a cannonball as he swiftly shot toward Xiao Yan, who was in close proximity. Dark green Do Chi swiftly agglomerated on the surface of Sun Hua's body. In the blink of an eye, it transformed into a solid armor that wrapped around his entire body. The armor was covered with sharp thorns that were especially sharp. When it cut through the air, it left behind numerous dark black crack lines in the surrounding empty space. An invisible wind was like a sharp blade that swept across the interior of the room. Banging sounds of explosions continued to resound. At this moment, regardless of whether it was under his feet, above his head, or the other decorations in the room, everything was turned into pieces by Sun Hua's attack. The unstoppable strength caused anyone who saw it to be shocked. However, at this moment, Xiao Yan, who was standing in front of Sun Hua, had an unmoved expression on his face. There was even a faint cold smile lingering in Xiao Yan's heart. Cuckoo! Suddenly, a faint cold laugh was emitted from Xiao Yan's mouth. Sun Hua attacked furiously. Only then did Xiao Yan raise his hand. His action appeared slow yet swift. There was a sense of urgency amidst the slowness, and afterimages were densely packed. Sun Hua's heart became even more furious when he saw Xiao Yan's face reveal a cold smile. A hoarse low roar was once again emitted from his throat. The strength of the solid armor on the surface of his body became even more terrifying. However, the next moment, clang! Xiao Yan's hand gently landed on the armor in front of him, which was covered with sharp thorns. This light palm strike easily blocked Sun Hua, who was charging over ferociously. The appearance of this scene caused the expression on Sun Hua's face under the armor to suddenly become shocked. When he raised his eyes and looked over, he saw that the expression on Xiao Yan's face was still calm. Sun Hua didn't seem to be putting any substantial pressure on Xiao Yan. It could even be said that Sun Hua's all-out attack was nothing but a piece of cake for Xiao Yan. How is this possible? Sun Hua's eyes were wide open, as if they were about to pop out of their sockets. The expression on his face was one of utter shock. As his throat rolled, cold sweat quickly poured out of Sun Hua's body, soaking his clothes. Xiao Yan's face revealed a cold smile in the face of this. His dark black eyes were filled with disdain. Although the Sun Hua before him was a 9-star half-martial emperor, in Xiao Yan's eyes, this was not the case. Your dou qi is flashy but without substance. Your armor is very loose. You are simply unable to withstand a single blow. The way I see it, your strength as a 9-star half-martial emperor is most likely obtained through the accumulation of external items. Hearing Xiao Yan's words, Sun Hua's heart suddenly trembled. The expression on his face under the armor also became incomparably horrified. Never would he have imagined that the Xiao Yan before him was actually this frightening. His strength as a 9-star half-martial emperor was actually only obtained half a year ago by consuming a large amount of medicinal pellets in order to barely make a breakthrough. However, it was precisely because of this that his strength would no longer be able to make any progress in the future. Haha, with your strength, there's no need to mention it. At the very most, you're only comparable to a peak late-stage 8-star half-martial emperor. If it were a 9-star half-martial emperor that had cultivated through normal means, even if that person had just made a breakthrough, they would still be able to easily take care of you. Xiao Yan's ruthless mocking words pierced into Sun Hua's heart like sharp thorns. This caused Sun Hua's face under the armor to rapidly become malevolent. However, even if that's the case, how could you possibly block me like this? As Sun Hua roared with a hoarse voice, his body suddenly moved. Covered by his armor, he ruthlessly smashed his fist toward Xiao Yan's head. His dou qi condensed on his armored arm. The might of his dou qi became even more frightening. Everywhere his dou qi passed, even space itself would instantly collapse. Xiao Yan sneered. The current him was even able to take care of late-stage 9-star half-martial emperors. Thus, there was no need for him to take care of this fellow before him who could not even be considered a 9-star half-martial emperor. Slow, too slow. Faced with Sun Hua's attack, Xiao Yan's evaluation was only 2 words. In the next moment, Xiao Yan slightly twisted his extended palm. Then, a gorgeous heavenly flame flashed through his eyes. With a bang, Sun Hua's body was knocked back by Xiao Yan's attack. Vine thorns. Sun Hua, who was knocked back, was still unwilling to be outdone. The dou qi within his body surged violently, and rapidly condensed into dark green thorns in the surrounding space. As the thorns rotated, they emitted an ice-cold sheen that resembled sword rays. Kill! Sun Hua gnashed his teeth and roared furiously. At the same time as the thorns shot out, Sun Hua's body also rapidly turned into a dark green ray of light that shot toward Xiao Yan with a rapid speed. Numerous thorns streaked through the air, forming an encirclement as they rapidly shot toward Xiao Yan. In this narrow space, Xiao Yan was simply unable to dodge. Seeing this, the corners of Xiao Yan's mouth rose into a slight sneer. He did not even look at the thorns that were shooting toward him. Instead, at a certain moment, his body that was standing on the spot suddenly twisted, and a whip kick ruthlessly smashed into the space beside him. Bang! In an instant, a frightening power burst forth like a torrential flood. At the same time, in the originally empty space, the armored Sun Hua suddenly appeared and took Xiao Yan's ferocious attack head-on. After the attack landed, Sun Hua's expression immediately became extremely frightened. His eyes were filled with endless terror. However, Xiao Yan did not give him a chance to catch his breath. This was because the soul strength that he had spread out had clearly sensed that many experts had already gathered outside the 4-way pavilion. It was likely that all the half-emperor experts in the entire Coldstream city had gathered here. Under the probing of Xiao Yan's soul strength, there were over a dozen 9-star half-emperors among these people. As for the half-emperors of various levels, there were even more innumerable. As for the Do Di experts, perhaps because of Bai Ying and Sun Shuo, they did not make a move and only watched the situation from afar. Xiao Yan's heart involuntarily tightened when he sensed the many experts in the outside world. It was unexpected that the entire city would be mobilized to capture him because of him alone. It was likely that if it was not because of his relationship with those two, it was likely that there would not be a lack of elite Do Di. Looks like I can't delay any longer. Xiao Yan muttered in a low voice. His cold gaze immediately landed on Sun Hua, who had been sent flying. The corners of his mouth lifted into a bone-chilling smile. Immediately, his body moved. Once he used the sky extinction steps, Xiao Yan instantly appeared beside Sun Hua. Golden light shot out from his eyes as Xiao Yan's body rapidly expanded. Diamond Glass Body. Chapter 582. Bang! Outside the four-way pavilion where countless people were gathered, numerous figures rapidly flew over like meteors. However, at a certain moment, the four-way pavilion before the crowd's eyes was suddenly destroyed by a frightening power in an instant. Before the astonished gazes of everyone present, the powerful power burst forth from the four-way pavilion. Moreover, it only used a short instant to destroy the entire four-way pavilion. At the same time as the enormous building collapsed, eye-piercing golden pillars of light shot out from the four-way pavilion like the radiance emitted by the sun. This caused everyone who saw this scene to involuntarily close their eyes. At the same time, before the four-way pavilion completely collapsed, the people within it rapidly turned into rays of light and rapidly flew out from within. When the crowd raised their eyes again, the eye-piercing golden light gradually decreased. Soon after, a giant that could hold up the sky slowly appeared before the crowd's eyes. At this moment, a somewhat miserable-looking figure was emitting a thin layer of dark green Do Chi radiance from his body. With the eyesight of the crowd, they were able to clearly see that the dark green Do Chi was condensing into a set of armor. However, at this moment, this armor appeared to be completely filled with conspicuous cracks. On the chest of the armor, one could clearly see a depression. That was caused by Xiao Yan's whip kick. At this moment, the golden giant standing before the crowd was precisely Xiao Yan, who had used the diamond glass body. Since he would be exposed sooner or later, Xiao Yan did not pay too much attention to the greedy gazes of the crowd. He had already seen too much of this. Cough, cough. Under the armor, fear was written all over Sun Hua's deathly pale face. No matter what, he had never imagined that the strength of a 9-star half-martial emperor that he was so proud of would appear so insignificant before Xiao Yan. Could it be that it was truly as Xiao Yan had said? Was he really that weak? No, it wasn't that Sun Hua was too weak. It was just that Xiao Yan's true strength was simply too terrifying. Merely with the strength of a 6-star half-martial emperor, Sun Hua was able to defeat a late-stage 9-star half-martial emperor. Before him, Sun Hua was truly nothing. Thus, it could not be said that Sun Hua was weak. It could only be said that the opponent he faced was simply too powerful. Cough, cough. Sun Hua's entire body involuntarily trembled while he coughed intensely in his mouth. However, the expression in his eyes when he looked at Xiao Yan had become even more vicious. Cough, cough, Xiao Yan, today, even if I have to pay with my life, I will fight you to the death. If I can't get what I want, don't even think about leaving. Sun Hua's body swiftly swelled as his extremely hoarse voice sounded. The armor on the surface of his body disappeared. Numerous bright red crack lines swiftly split open on his dry, wrinkled skin. Glaring bright red fresh blood swiftly surged out from them. Even the Do Chi within his body swiftly became violent at this moment. From the looks of it, Sun Hua was clearly planning to self-destruct. Seeing this scene, the expressions on the faces of the surrounding half-martial emperors in the sky abruptly changed. They did not expect that before Xiao Yan had even been captured, Sun Hua had already given them such a great gift. Madman. This guy is truly a madman. Quickly retreat. This madman is going to self-destruct. Quickly retreat. Immediately, numerous alarmed cries began to resound in the sky. The crowd that had just gathered around the four-way pavilion immediately fled in panic like a flock of frightened sheep. The sky above Coldstream City immediately turned into a pot of porridge. What a joke. No matter what, that Sun Hua was a 9-star half-martial emperor. Even though his strength did not match that of a 9-star half-martial emperor, Sun Hua's strength would not be weak at all. If he were to explode at this moment, the might of his self-detonation would be so powerful that even the 9-star half-martial emperors present would not be able to escape calamity. However, while everyone in the sky was panicking, Xiao Yan sneered in his heart. At the same time, his enormous golden palm suddenly clenched tightly. Clanging sounds of metal colliding immediately rang out in the sky. At the same time, amidst the panic, everyone's gazes were once again attracted by Xiao Yan. "I'll let you self-destruct." The instant a cold and disdainful shout was emitted from Xiao Yan's mouth, the enormous golden fist carried an extremely frightening power as it mercilessly tore through space. In the blink of an eye, it had already ruthlessly smashed into Sun Hua, whose body had swelled to an extreme degree. Bang! An earth-shaking explosion resounded in the sky above Coldstream City. Xiao Yan's fist had directly exploded a large region of space. After receiving Xiao Yan's fist, the berserk Do Qi within Sun Hua's body was instantly dispersed by Xiao Yan's fist, directly breaking free from Sun Hua's control. This also passively prevented Sun Hua from self-destructing. When the fist landed, Sun Hua's body immediately flew out uncontrollably like a broken sack. Everywhere he passed, a large amount of blood sprayed out. In the end, Sun Hua's body, who was on the verge of death, smashed heavily into the main hall of the Sun Mansion. With a loud bang, Sun Hua's body ruthlessly smashed open a huge crater in the enormous courtyard. At this moment, everyone from the Sun family had ashen expressions as they looked at the unconscious Sun Hua in the crater. This was especially true for the Sun family's head, Sun Shua. His expression was extremely ugly at this moment. It would be fine if this had happened before the eyes of the Sun family. However, what infuriated Sun Shua the most was that the Bai family's head was right before his eyes. "This is Sun Hua." Right at this moment, Bai Yi, who was behind Bai Ying, immediately revealed an expression of shock. His eyes stared fixedly at the unconscious figure in the crater, and his voice was filled with disbelief. What? Could it be that this guy is also a 9-star half-emperor? Seeing the shocked expression on Bai Ye's face, Bai Ying could not help but feel curious. He raised his eyebrows slightly and asked Bai Yi. "Yes, this person is also an early 9-star half-emperor. Although I have never fought with him, there is no doubt about that. I never expected him to become like this in such a short period of time." Bai Yi nodded and looked at Sun Hua in the crater with lingering fear. He could not help but feel a chill run down his back. There was no need to think too much about the person who attacked Sun Hua. It was naturally Xiao Yan. However, Bai Yi did not expect Sun Hua to be defeated so quickly. Moreover, he was defeated so miserably. It was hard to imagine that if he was in Sun Hua's place, the one lying in the crater would likely be him, Bai Yi. Thinking of this, Bai Ye's heart surged with coldness. "Oh?" Hearing Bai Ye's words, Bai Ying could not help but reveal an expression of surprise. It had only been 4 to 6 hours since he received the news from Bai Yi. However, in such a short period of time, Xiao Yan had swiftly defeated a 9-star half-emperor. Moreover, because Sun Hua did not recognize Xiao Yan at the beginning, perhaps the time Xiao Yan used to defeat Sun Hua was much shorter than what Bai Ying had imagined. Thinking of this, Bai Ying's expression could not help but change. At the same time, he felt a wave of shock for Xiao Yan in his heart. Being able to defeat a 9-star half-martial emperor within such a short period of time, Xiao Yan's fighting strength could only be described with the word frightening. After all, from what he knew, Xiao Yan's current cultivation level had yet to exceed a 9-star half-martial emperor. However, immediately after, an extremely obscure light flashed in the depths of Bai Ying's eyes. When he raised his head to look at Sun Shua, a smile also flashed across the corners of Bai Ying's mouth. This change in less than an instant was not noticed by Sun Shua at all. Chapter 583. Haha, brother Sun Shua, never would I have imagined that your Sun family's people would be beaten back so quickly. This truly astonishes me. Could it be that your Sun family's people only possess this little bit of strength? However, as far as I know, this person is also a 9-star half-martial emperor, no? How could he be this weak? Could it be that your Sun family's people have forcibly increased their strength through the use of medicinal pellets? Bai Ying lifted his chin and pointed at Sun Hua in the huge pit as he spoke with a cold smile. Hearing these words, the expression on Sun Shua's steely green face instantly became incomparably gloomy. His hands, which were covered by his sleeves, suddenly clenched into fists. His entire body trembled intensely, unable to contain his anger. At this moment, Bai Ying once again laughed out loud. The words in his mouth seemed to be advising him. Brother Sun Shua, I know that your Sun clan is the weakest among the 4 great clans. However, this method of yours is really too despicable. This method will only harm your Sun clan in the future. Brother Sun, you should listen to this older brother's advice. It is best that you stop using those crooked methods of yours as soon as possible. Bai Ying laughed out loud. The corners of his mouth lifted into a cold smile. The expression in his eyes was filled with ridicule. On the opposite side, Sun Shua heard these words from Bai Ying's mouth. The anger in his heart soared to the top of his head. The dou qi that had been suppressed in his body also began to surge uncontrollably at this moment. Humph! Suddenly, Sun Shua's nose emitted a cold snort that was like a low roar. At the same time, the hand under his sleeves finally swung out violently. The dou qi in his body churned. The majestic dou qi was like a wave that gushed out from his palm and swept out in all directions. Bai Ying's expression involuntarily changed when he saw this. Although he was not afraid of Sun Shua, he did not wish to have a conflict with him at such a time. Otherwise, if the other 2 great clans were to learn of this, they would interfere. At that time, if his Bai clan really fought with the Sun clan, the other 2 clans would simply watch from the sidelines. This would not be a good thing. After all, the Zhua and Hua clans were much stronger than them. Once the Sun and Bai clans fought, they would be inferior to the other 2 clans in the future. Bai Ying involuntarily narrowed his eyes when he thought of this. The dou qi in the vortex in his body quietly circulated at this moment, preparing to face Sun Shua. However, soon after, bang! Dou qi swept out, turning into a long spear. Finally, it descended from the sky and ruthlessly stabbed into the huge pit below, in the chest of the already unconscious Sun Ti. The frightening strength directly pierced Sun Hua's body deep into the ground. Half of the dou qi spear, which was over 100 feet long, was also forcefully pierced into the ground. Looking down from the surface, one could no longer see Sun Hua's body. There was only a large pool of fresh blood that splattered out under the effect of the enormous strength, dyeing the surrounding ground red. The corner of Bai Ying's mouth lifted into a cold smile. He first narrowed his eyes as he glanced at Sun Shua, after which, his gaze turned and looked at the surroundings of the courtyard. Sure enough, when Bai Ying's gaze landed on the few Sun clan guards guarding the courtyard, their expressions changed. It was likely that they were similarly surprised in their hearts. They had never expected their clan leader to attack his own clan member. Moreover, from the looks of his furious appearance, even if Sun Hua had the strength to refute earlier, it was likely that he would not have any chance of survival under this ferocious attack. Humph! My Sun clan does not raise trash. My Sun clan does not need strength that relies on medicinal pills to accumulate strength. We will definitely not allow such a person to exist. Sun Shua's face was cold as he spoke in an extremely deep voice. He seemed to have sensed the change in the expressions of the guards. Only after these words were spoken did the expressions on the guards' faces ease up. Of course, it was unknown what they were thinking in their hearts. Bai Ying could not help but raise his brows when he saw this. He never expected Sun Shua to actually say something like this. All of his anger was poured onto Sun Hua, who could not be any more dead. This could be considered as saving the face of his Sun family. Otherwise, if Bai Ying were to spread this matter in the future, his Sun family would not even have the power to refute. Humph! Sun Yan, Sun Liang, go. Capture Xiao Yan for me. No matter what, he killed a member of my Bai clan. Today, he must not be allowed to leave this place. Soon after, Sun Shua's foot suddenly stomped on the ground, and his entire body instantly rose into the air. A terrifying aura erupted from his body as a stern shout was emitted from his mouth. Immediately after, the expressions of the Sun clan's 9-star half-martial emperors standing in the crowd around Xiao Yan changed slightly when they heard their clan leader's order. One must know that they had just witnessed Xiao Yan kill a 9-star half-martial emperor with a single punch. Now that Sun Shua was ordering them to attack, the 9-star half-martial emperors from the Sun clan were more or less nervous in their hearts. After all, they did not want to end up in the same state as Sun Hua. Haha, clan leader Sun, it seems that your Sun clan is truly powerless. With so many 9-star half-martial emperors, you actually don't even dare to deal with a single 6-star half-martial emperor. At this moment, Bai Ying deliberately mocked and ridiculed. At the same time, he once again looked towards Bai Yi. Noticing Bai Ying's gaze, Bai Ye's expression could not help but change again. A bad premonition rapidly surged from the bottom of his heart. Humph. If your Bai clan has the ability, why don't you let Bai Yi go first? Haha, that's exactly what I was thinking. After all, the strength of my Bai clan's members is obtained through steady cultivation, unlike some. At the end of his words, Bai Ying intentionally paused for a moment before raising his eyes. With a smile on his face he said to Bai Yi, as a member of my Bai clan, this clan leader thinks highly of you. You'd best not disappoint this clan leader. Hearing this, Bai Yi was slightly startled. Although he wanted to say something, in the end, he was powerless to refute. After all, the person before him was his Bai clan's clan leader. His words were something that no one in the Bai clan could refute. Haha, don't worry. I know that Xiao Yan is powerful. Thus, no matter what, as long as you dare to fight him, regardless of whether you win or lose, at least you won't lose face for our Bai clan. After his laughter sounded, Bai Ying intentionally or unintentionally glanced at Sun Shuo. The mockery in his eyes deepened. At the same time, this made Sun Shuo even more furious. Hearing this, Bai Yi helplessly nodded. Although the outcome had not changed, at least Bai Ying had given him a reason to breathe. This made Bai Yi feel slightly more relaxed. Although he was not sure if he could deal with Xiao Yan, Bai Yi was certain that as long as he wanted to, it would not be easy for Xiao Yan to deal with him. After all, with Sun Hua as an example, Bai Yi would only be more cautious when facing Xiao Yan. Bai Yi nodded heavily. Only then did he inhale a deep breath of air. His feet suddenly stomped on the ground. Immediately, rock fragments burst apart and Bai Ye's body swiftly shot into the sky like a cannonball that had been shot out. His eyes turned, leaped over the crowd that swarmed in the sky, and landed on Xiao Yan's body, which had transformed into a giant god. Xiao Yan seemed to have sensed the gaze that had shot over. His body suddenly turned. At the same time that he scared away the surrounding crowd, a pair of bright golden overbearing eyes instantly landed on Bai Ye's body. The person who left the 4 pavilion earlier was you, right? Xiao Yan ignored the surrounding people. His sharp eyes stared at Bai Yi as he spoke in a dense tone. Bai Yi was non-committal when he heard this. At the same time, a thought passed through his heart. The dou qi within his body immediately circulated throughout his entire body. With a puff sound, dense white dou qi rose from the surface of Bai Ye's body like a cluster of flames. Chapter 584. The dense white dou qi rose on the surface of Bai Ye's body like a flame. The temperature of the place also gradually rose when the dou qi surged out from Bai Ye's body. Oh! Fire affinity dou qi ha! A trace of surprise involuntarily flashed across Xiao Yan's eyes when he saw this. He had never seen a fire affinity dou qi that could turn into a dense white color. Humph! Bai Yi merely snorted coldly with a grave expression in the face of this. His body suddenly moved. As the flame drifted, his body disappeared from the spot. At the same time, the expressions of most of the Bandi experts present changed slightly. Bai Ye's strength was even greater when compared to Sun Hua. At the very least, Bai Yi did not rely on an external object to raise his strength. Ha! Mysterious flame hand. In the blink of an eye, Bai Yi had already passed through the crowd and swiftly arrived in front of Xiao Yan. He waved his large hand and dense white dou qi swiftly agglomerated in his palm. His body rotated in midair and a palm was violently smashed toward Xiao Yan's chest. Looking from a distance, the current Bai Yi was like a sparrow and a human when compared to Xiao Yan. The difference in size between the two of them was difficult to imagine. The person who attacked first was actually Bai Yi. Looking at the current Bai Yi, the fear in his eyes had already been reduced by more than half. He also understood that when faced with an expert like Xiao Yan, fear would only cause him to be at a disadvantage. If he wanted to defeat Xiao Yan in front of him, he must first not be afraid. Otherwise, how could he fight if he feared life and death? Moreover, at such a close distance, Bai Yi thought that Xiao Yan, who had transformed into the King Kong glass body, would definitely be a little slow. At this moment, he had suddenly arrived in front of Xiao Yan. Even with Xiao Yan's reaction, it would be difficult for him to immediately launch an attack. As long as his speed was fast enough, it would not be so easy for Xiao Yan to injure him. Unfortunately, Bai Ye's thinking was clearly wrong. The King Kong glass body had accompanied Xiao Yan for many years. Xiao Yan was extremely proficient in its usage. The original flaw of the King Kong glass body had been completely made up for by Xiao Yan's absolute strength. Hence, Bai Ye's actions were completely useless in Xiao Yan's eyes. Cuckoo, your thinking is not bad. Unfortunately, you are still too slow. Xiao Yan laughed softly. Xiao Yan's fist. Xiao Yan was about to hit Bai Ye's body. He came from behind Xiao Yan's attack. Immediately, the sound of bones being broken repeatedly sounded. The expressions of the various experts watching the battle changed once again. No one had expected that even though it was a person stronger than Sun Hua, he would still be unable to endure a punch from Xiao Yan. This fellow is really too frightening. Is he really a human? This kind of frightening physical strength. It is likely that even those magical beasts who specialize in training their physical bodies cannot compare with him. Bang! While everyone was shocked in their hearts, Bai Ye's body was sent flying by Xiao Yan's punch. Do Qi poured out and Bai Ye's body forcefully came to a stop in the air with great difficulty. After pausing, Bai Yi immediately felt as though his body was about to fall apart. An intense pain was being emitted from all over his body. This kind of intense pain was something that did not have much of an effect even if he used his Do Qi to suppress it. Damn it! This fellow's true strength is far greater than this. Bai Yi muttered in his heart. At the same time, he involuntarily turned his gaze to Bai Ying in the distance. At this moment, only he could decide whether he should stay or leave. Bai Yi, I'll leave the face of my Bai family in your hands. Hold him back. As long as you can hold him back for another hour, you will be able to rest at that time. Once we return to the clan, I will reward you with 2 Tier 3 medicinal pills. Bai Ying transmitted his voice to Bai Yi with a solemn expression when he saw Bai Ye's gaze shoot over. Hearing this, with the temptation of the pill, a fiery feeling immediately rose in Bai Ye's heart. A 3rd-level pill. Even if he were to exhaust all of his family's resources, he would at most be able to obtain 1. However, he never expected that his master would actually ask for 2. Bai Ye's gaze turned and once again landed on Xiao Yan. The depths of his eyes were filled with a fiery heat. He was really going all out for the sake of those 2 Tier 3 medicinal pills. Ha! Xiao Yan again. Bai Ye's body suddenly moved with a furious cry. He ignored the injuries in his body and dodged a couple of times in the air in the blink of an eye before arriving behind Xiao Yan. He waved his large hand and a broadsword immediately landed in his hand. Do Qi gathered and the broadsword emitted a dazzling white light under the cover of the dense white Do Qi. At the same time, the temperature of the area once again rose. Ha! Blazing blade slash. The broadsword swiftly descended after the furious cry sounded. The moment Xiao Yan attacked, the broadsword ruthlessly landed on Xiao Yan's back. Bai Ye's body once again flashed after the attack landed. Xiao Yan's body steadily stood in the air. Both of his hands continued to dance as he received the numerous Do skills that Bai Yi had unleashed. The faces of everyone who saw this scene were filled with shock. Their hearts were incomparably shocked by Xiao Yan's soul-stirring action. It should be known that as a 9-star half-emperor, Bai Ye's strength was already frighteningly strong. If he were to add those various man-class Do skills, once he used them, it would not be an exaggeration to describe the frightening might that could destroy the world. However, at this moment, when faced with these man-class Do skills that could cause the expressions of all half-emperors to change, Xiao Yan had actually relied on his physical strength and the overbearingness of the King Kong glass body to forcefully shatter them. The emotions in the hearts of everyone present had already reached an indescribable level as they personally witnessed the scene before them. They even doubted whether the Xiao Yan before them was truly a human. Was he really a half-emperor? Was he really only a 6-star half-emperor? The broadsword danced in the sky. Numerous shockingly frightening Do skills were completely unleashed by Bai Ye's 9-star half-emperor strength. In a short period of time, Bai Yi could be said to have unleashed all the skills that he had learned in his life. Over a dozen powerful Do skills were wantonly shot out from Bai Ye's hands. Other than a portion of them being blocked by Xiao Yan's Do Qi, most of them were blocked by Xiao Yan using the most violent method. Relying on his King Kong body, he practically destroyed a man-class Do skill with a single punch. No matter how hard Bai Yi tried to unleash his Do skills, no matter how crazily the Do Qi within his body gushed out, in the end, what he received in exchange was still Xiao Yan's normal punch. Before Xiao Yan's punch, It was as if all the attacks were useless. */ Sparks flew in all directions. The broadsword once again fiercely smashed onto Xiao Yan's arm. However, the result was that Xiao Yan forcefully shook it. As the enormous force poured out, the broadsword was fiercely sent flying. Even Bai Ye's body was uncontrollably sent flying backwards. Seeing this scene, the hearts of the crowd outside the arena were once again shocked. They didn't know how many times Xiao Yan had sent Bai Yi flying. However, there was one thing that everyone was very clear in their hearts. Even until now, in the process of fighting with Bai Yi, Xiao Yan, as the main character, still hadn't used a single Do skill. Just this point alone was enough to prove how powerful Xiao Yan was. Forcefully enduring the numbness that came from his arms, Bai Ye's expression was grave. The remaining Do Qi within his body crazily surged out of his body. With a twist of his wrist, he once again tightly grasped the hilt of his broadsword. His feet fiercely stepped into the air, and in the blink of an eye, his figure once again disappeared. In the next instant, the broadsword appeared above Xiao Yan's head. At this moment, Bai Ye's figure was nowhere to be seen. "Ha! Try out this famous Do skill of mine." Suddenly, Bai Ye's stern cry reverberated throughout the entire place. At the same time, a thick white Do Qi flame suddenly rose from the broadsword that appeared above Xiao Yan's head with a puff sound. The fierce flame soared to the sky and pierced through the 9 heavens. The aura on it also swiftly became frightening. Red Lotus Soul-Breaking Blade. After the aura on the broadsword had agglomerated to an extremely frightening degree, a hoarse low cry was suddenly emitted from Bai Ye's mouth. His roar was like thunder, shaking the entire place. At the same time, the broadsword that was burning with a thick white flame suddenly shook. Under the eruption of a frightening strength, the surrounding space instantly collapsed. At this moment, the broadsword also carried a frightening aura that could destroy the world as it violently fell toward Xiao Yan below. The expressions on the faces of the surrounding people involuntarily changed when they sensed the frightening aura on the broadsword. Even the few 9-star ban emperors present involuntarily revealed grave expressions on their faces. On the other side, Bai Ying revealed a surprised expression on his face when he saw that Bai Yi was actually forced to use his full strength by Xiao Yan. Humph! However, at this moment, Xiao Yan suddenly emitted a cold snort. His body shook and a beautiful heavenly flame immediately agglomerated on the surface of his body. The frighteningly high temperature caused the surrounding air to immediately become unusually dry. Everyone nearby also swiftly withdrew with a change in expression. Xiao Yan raised his head. A pair of golden eyes that were emitting a golden light stared at the broadsword that was rapidly descending above his head. His heart was icy cold. This Bai Yi had really provoked the fury in his heart. Ha! Suddenly, Xiao Yan emitted an earth-shaking cry from his mouth. At the same time, his large hand suddenly clenched and a beautiful heavenly flame swiftly agglomerated in Xiao Yan's palm. In the blink of an eye, it agglomerated into an enormous flaming ruler. Without pausing, the instant the enormous flaming ruler was agglomerated, Xiao Yan's hand, which was holding the enormous ruler, suddenly swung his arm. The enormous ruler suddenly rose into the air. At the same time, a terrifying aura of destruction that was not the slightest bit weaker than the former was swiftly emitted from the enormous flaming ruler. 7-layer sky-breaking ruler. 1 ruler. Xiao Yan let out a stern cry in his heart. Soon after, the enormous ruler in his hand violently cut through the empty space. The powerful strength caused the entire place to be destroyed. At the same time, the enormous ruler rushed through the empty space, transforming into a dark black, deep, endless empty space. Immediately, the expressions of everyone present changed drastically. No one had expected that Xiao Yan in front of them was actually already this frightening. A random wave of his hand was actually a human-class Do skill. This fellow. Is he really just a half-martial emperor? He is indeed a half-martial emperor. However, the strength that he possesses far surpasses that of an ordinary half-martial emperor. Regardless of whether it is the degree of condensation of the Do Qi within his body or his comprehension of Do skills, they have all reached the peak. It is extremely dangerous to be an opponent of such a person. Unless one has the confidence to kill him. Otherwise, once he matures, no one in the entire Western region will be a match for him. Tisktius. To be able to make the 4 great sects work together to hunt him down, he is really not someone that an ordinary person can compare with. Heh. He already possesses such frightening battle strength as a half-martial emperor. Once he reaches the level of a true Do-D, won't he be able to fight against Origin Realm experts? The few Do-D experts who were watching the battle from afar could not help but click their tongues in amazement. The Xiao Yan before them was much more frightening than they had imagined. Even they found it hard to believe that a 6-star half-martial emperor could erupt with such great strength. This person from the Bai clan is about to be defeated. An expert Do-D stared at the giant ruler that Xiao Yan had swung. He sensed the extremely frightening destructive strength within it. Even with his mental fortitude, he could not help but frown slightly. Soon after, in the next moment, a brilliant ruler glow swept out from the giant flaming ruler. Wherever it passed, the space within a radius of 100 miles would instantly collapse. Everyone outside the battleground rapidly retreated at this moment. No one wanted to be affected by this frightening strength. In the distance, Bai Ying narrowed his eyes as he stared intently at Xiao Yan. The shock in his heart was even more unimaginable. Even he had not expected that a half-martial emperor like Xiao Yan would actually be so powerful. As for Sun Shua beside him, other than a cold smile, there was an even more solemn expression on his face. There were very few people who could be treated in such a manner by him. This was something that even the other 3 clan heads of the 4 great clans could not do. At this moment, Xiao Yan had completely overturned his understanding of a half-martial emperor. He had never imagined that a mere half-martial emperor would be able to erupt with such frightening strength. This brat. He must not be allowed to leave this place today. Sun Shua quietly cried out in his heart. At the same time, the hands under his sleeves slowly clenched. The Do-Chi in his body quietly circulated. However, all of this was also sensed by Bai Ying, who had been monitoring him. Boom! The earth-shaking explosion was just like an invisible storm. Even though it did not possess any substantial strength, it still caused the expressions of everyone in Coldstream City to wildly change. The eardrums of quite a number of people who were weaker were instantly ruptured by this explosion. Fresh blood was accompanied by an intense pain as it surged out from their ears. Everyone's faces were filled with ferocity and pain. Even those 9-star half-martial emperors had similarly turned pale at this moment. The frightening strength contained within the broadsword was reduced by over half the moment it collided with the ruler glow. It was only when Bai Yi, who was at an unknown location, wildly exhausted the Do-Chi within his body that the broadsword stabilized. However, it was barely able to match Xiao Yan's ruler glow and was far from enough to break it. Only at this moment did Bai Yi completely understand just how frightening the strength of this Xiao Yan in front of him was. It was likely that there was no one other than a Do-D who could contend with such a person. However, at this moment, even though he had already come to a realization, it was already too late. There was no turning back an arrow that had been shot. Now he either had to use all his strength to fight with Xiao Yan, or he would end up seriously injured or even dead. Damn it! I'll go all out. Bai Yi clenched his teeth tightly. He crazily maneuvered the little Do-Chi left in his body. His pale face had turned flushed red because of this. Even his pair of densely white eyes were filled with a scarlet color at this moment. However, even though Bai Yi used all his strength, everything he did was still useless in front of Xiao Yan. 7-layer sky-breaking ruler, 2 feet. An indifferent low cry sounded from within Xiao Yan's heart. Before this ruler glow could land, another ruler glow violently shot out from the enormous ruler in Xiao Yan's hand. In the blink of an eye, it merged with the previous ruler glow. Immediately, the already frightening might of the ruler glow became even more frightening at this moment. In merely an instant, a clear cracking sound was emitted from the broadsword that was covered by Do-Chi. Immediately after, a metal fragment the size of a palm shot out from the broadsword. Grug! At the same time, Bai Yi also involuntarily spat out a large mouthful of fresh blood. The aura of his entire body instantly weakened. 3 feet. Xiao Yan was merciless in the face of this. He waved the enormous ruler in his hand, and another ruler glow swept toward the broadsword from all directions while carrying a frightening aura that could destroy the world. Bang! This time around it was different from before. Under this attack of Xiao Yan's, the strength of the merger of the 3 ruler glows was basically unstoppable as it completely shattered the broadsword. Get lost. Otherwise, the next thing to shatter will be your head. A thunder-like voice reverberated unceasingly over this place. At this moment, the words from Xiao Yan's mouth reverberated in everyone's minds. Everyone's hearts were filled with shock and horror. Who?
Xiao Yan slowly exhaled a breath of air.
Only then did he turn around. His gaze involuntarily glanced at Bai Ying and Sun Shua, who were standing in the distant empty space. His heart involuntarily tightened. Those two were genuine elite Do Di. Once they attacked, Xiao Yan would have nowhere to run. He had finished off Sun Hua earlier merely to intimidate the surrounding group of people. If this continued to drag on, it would not be a good thing for Xiao Yan. Xiao Yan could not be bothered with Bai Yi when he thought of this. His gaze ruthlessly swept over the surrounding people. Anyone who met Xiao Yan's gaze involuntarily retreated with trembling bodies. Xiao Yan, on the other hand, coldly glanced at them before turning around. He stepped on empty space and flew out of Cold Stream City. Seeing this, the expression in the eyes of Bai Ying, who was standing in the empty space, changed slightly. He did not wish for Xiao Yan to flee at this moment. He needed to think of a way to stop him. Bai Ying's gaze turned as he thought of this. He hurriedly looked at Bai Yi once again.
Unfortunately, the latter was already an arrow at the end of its flight. It was impossible for him to have the strength to stop Xiao Yan. This involuntarily caused Bai Ying to feel helpless in his heart. The time was not right. If Xiao Yan were to leave at this moment, it would not be a good thing for him. Humph. Stop right there. You can forget about leaving this place today. However, at this moment, Sun Shua, who was beside Bai Ying, suddenly let out a cold snort. At the same time, an even more frightening aura and pressure instantly covered the sky above Cold Stream City. Powerful Do Qi swiftly agglomerated into a circular barrier around Xiao Yan's body, blocking his footsteps that were just about to leave. Chapter 585. The frightening oppressive might that filled the sky caused the expressions of everyone in the sky to abruptly change. Even those 9-star half-martial emperors had pale expressions on their faces. Faced with the pressure of a Do Di's aura, other than the few Do Dis, no one present was able to endure Sun Shua's extremely frightening aura. Under the pressure of this aura, the group of half-martial emperors in the sky could not help but fly backwards. Most of them were also forced to the ground by the pressure of this aura. They raised their heads with frightened expressions and looked at Sun Shua in the sky. An elite Do Di was truly frightening. Just this aura alone was able to easily suppress a 9-star half-martial emperor. The so-called half-martial emperors were simply not worth mentioning in front of a true Do Di. Bang! Xiao Yan's feet violently stepped on the already collapsed pitch-black space. At the same time as the enormous strength poured down from his feet, Xiao Yan's body, which was about to fall, was forcibly lifted up by Xiao Yan. At this very moment, even someone like Xiao Yan had a similarly grave expression on his face. Compared to Zhao Xian, this Sun Shua was even more frightening. Although there was only a difference of 1 star between the two, the difference between the two was like the abyss between the heavens and the earth. A middle stage 2-star Do Di was able to easily suppress an initial stage 2-star Do Di. Sun Shua, on the other hand, was an entire star stronger than Zhao Xian. His strength was not something that Zhao Xian could compare with. Amen? Seeing that Xiao Yan had actually forcefully stabilized his voice under the pressure of his aura, a shocked expression involuntarily flashed across Sun Shua's face. He did not expect that a 6-star half-martial emperor like Xiao Yan would actually be able to resist the pressure of his powerful aura of a 3-star Do Di. This was something that the other 9-star half-martial emperors present were unable to do. Although Xiao Yan possessed a fighting strength that far exceeded his cultivation level, Xiao Yan was ultimately still a 6-star Bandi. He was actually able to tenaciously stand in the air under the frightening pressure of a 3-star Do Di. This point was really unbelievable. At the same time, the countless number of Bandi experts on the ground also threw surprised gazes at Xiao Yan. Who could have imagined that a Bandi would actually be able to endure the powerful aura and pressure of an elite Do Di? This involuntarily caused all the Bandi experts present to feel doubt in their hearts. Was this Xiao Yan in front of them really just a Bandi? Humph. So what if you can withstand the pressure of this emperor's aura? Dang! Sun Shua coldly snorted in a disdainful tone. His body suddenly moved. The next moment, his body had already appeared in front of Xiao Yan. This frightening speed caused all the Bandi experts in the city to once again feel shocked in their hearts. Soon after, Sun Shua's face was filled with ruthlessness. Do Qi poured out from his body as he waved his large sleeve. A palm was violently thrown toward Xiao Yan's chest. At the same time, the pores all over Xiao Yan's body immediately stood when he saw this extremely frightening attack from Sun Shua.
Fear swiftly rose within his heart. At the same time, a thought also flew within his heart. He crazily maneuvered the Do Chi within the vortex, intending to go all out and fight. Xiao Yan did not dare to be careless in the face of an elite Do Di, especially one with an even more frightening strength. Unless he used his full strength, Xiao Yan would not have any chance of surviving when faced with such an expert. Unfortunately, under the pressure of Sun Shua's aura, even Xiao Yan's Do Chi circulation speed had clearly slowed down. At this moment, it was extremely difficult for him to put up any resistance. Damn it! Move! Move! Xiao Yan crazily roared in his heart. The emotions in his heart swiftly became agitated. Threads of scarlet color actually surfaced within his pair of golden eyes at this moment. Haha! Xiao Yan, don't even think about having the chance to retaliate in front of this emperor. Haha die! A ridicule rose in Sun Shua's heart when he saw Xiao Yan's emotional agitation without any ability to retaliate. At the same time that he laughed out loud, the might of his palm also became even more frightening. Bang! The next moment, a soul-stirring explosion shook the sky. At the same time, a frightening Do Chi storm swiftly swept in all directions in the sky above Coldstream City with Xiao Yan and Shui Yan in the middle. The strength of the storm was so strong that it destroyed the buildings below as though they were cutting tofu. Under this frightening storm, everyone in the city below swiftly retreated with frightened faces. Those who were affected by the storm also spat out blood as they retreated. The powerful auras on their bodies swiftly weakened. A moment later, everyone's faces were filled with shock as they paused their bodies. When they lifted their heads to look at the sky, the expressions on their faces involuntarily changed. The scene in front of them was something that no one in the city had expected. He actually attacked. What happened? Don't tell me that he wants to fight head-on with Sun Shua for Xiao Yan. At this moment, everyone in the area was stunned as they stared at the sky. Standing in front of Xiao Yan was a white-clothed middle-aged man with a calm expression and a faint smile on the corner of his mouth. He was blocking Sun Shua with one hand. Bai Ying! Bang! Bai Ying exerted a little force with his palm and a force erupted, easily forcing Sun Shua back. Bai Ying's body did not move while Sun Shua's expression was gloomy as he retreated a few hundred feet. Only then did he raise his sharp eyes and stare at Bai Ying with a cold glint. His expression was ferocious as he snorted coldly and sternly said, Bai Ying, what do you mean by this? Don't tell me that you want to protect Xiao Yan. Sun Shua's tone was sharp and the anger in his words was self-evident. Haha, brother Sun Shua, we have an agreement. You and I will not attack. The matter of capturing Xiao Yan will be handed over to our subordinates. Your actions have already violated the agreement. Bai Ying's eyes flashed when he heard Sun Shua's words. After which, he laughed out loud and spoke to Sun Shua with a soft smile. Humph. I don't care about the agreement. Bai Yi has already been defeated. Xiao Yan is the prey of my Sun clan. You had best move aside. Otherwise, don't blame me for not showing mercy. Hearing this, Sun Shua sneered. His mouth was filled with mockery towards Bai Ying's words. At the same time, he ordered Bai Ying to retreat. Haha, brother Sun Shua, your words are wrong. Although Bai Yi has been defeated, my Bai clan has at the very least intervened. Compared to your Sun clan not having anyone accept the challenge, it is likely that you have taken the initiative to give up. Since this is the case, logically speaking, Xiao Yan should now belong to my Bai clan. Bai Ying sneered and spoke in a tone that was not weak at all. Chapter 586. Humph. So much nonsense. I don't care if they attack or not. All I know is that my Sun family has not given up on capturing Xiao Yan. At the same time, we have not been defeated. However, your Bai family has already been defeated. Xiao Yan belongs to my Sun family. Sun Shua's expression changed slightly. He was also a little angry in his heart. The few 9-star half-emperors from his family had caused him, the Sun family's patriarch, to lose face. Now that he had said such words, Sun Shua also felt flustered in his heart. Humph, since Patriarch Sun is twisting words and forcing logic, then there is no need to say anything more. Today, Xiao Yan is already in the bag of my Bai family. I must take him away no matter what. If Patriarch Sun insists on keeping him, then you can fight with me. If you win, Xiao Yan will belong to your Sun family. Otherwise, he will belong to my Bai family.
Bai Ying's face immediately revealed a cold expression when he heard Sun Shua's words. At the same time, a thought passed through his mind and the do qi within his body surged out. The purple-colored thunderbolt was like an enormous python as it lingered around Bai Ying's body. A terrifying aura and pressure caused the surrounding empty space to emit waves of trembling sounds. Seeing this scene, the crowd below could not help but burst into an uproar. They did not expect the patriarch of the Bai family to possess lightning-attributed do qi. The strength of the lightning affinity do qi could be considered an extremely overbearing existence among all the other do qi attributes. An ordinary expert would rarely get entangled with a lightning affinity opponent of the same level. After all, the dominance of the lightning attribute was not only reflected in its frightening might, but also in its paralyzing effect, which could greatly affect the outcome of a battle. Hence, under unnecessary circumstances, ordinary experts would rarely fight against such a person. Seeing that Bai Ying had already raised his do qi, the expression on Sun Shua's face could not help but change. However, in the depths of his eyes, an obscure light involuntarily flashed. Sun Shua narrowed his eyes and gritted his teeth. His body trembled, and immediately, a blue water vapor rose around his body. Within the small bubbles formed by the water vapor, if one looked carefully, there were actually some tiny earthen yellow lights circulating unceasingly. Seeing this scene in the sky, everyone below once again burst into an uproar. In comparison, Sun Shua was actually a water affinity elite do di. The two of them were of the same class. If they were to fight, it was likely that Bai Ying would be the one who would emerge victorious. Although the battle between the two had yet to begin, the spectators had already guessed the general situation. Humph, Sun Shua, let's see how your water-attributed do qi is going to fight against me. Bai Ying sneered. With a thought, the giant lightning python coiled around him and let out an ear-piercing roar at Sun Shua. Humph. Bai Ying, aren't you looking down on this clan head too much? However, at this moment, Sun Shua's mouth also emitted a mocking laugh. He immediately waved his large hand, and the large amount of water vapor that had formed around him swiftly merged and solidified. In the blink of an eye, it actually turned into a somewhat viscous earthen yellow liquid. Seeing this, the expression in Bai Ying's eyes involuntarily hardened. He frowned and felt that something was wrong in his heart. Ha ha, Bai Ying. This water rock do qi is something that this clan head spent a tremendous amount of effort in order to borrow the help of a high-tier earth affinity magic beast to refine and agglomerate from that fellow's body. Finally, it was successfully merged into this water rock do qi. This D's current do qi is coincidentally able to suppress your lightning python. Sun Shua's face was ferocious as he laughed. His face revealed a disdainful expression. Indeed, in the past, Sun Shua had often been taken advantage of by Bai Ying due to his do qi affinity. However, with this water rock do qi, it would be difficult for Bai Ying to suppress him. This was also one of the reasons why Sun Shua dared to compete with Bai Ying in a head-on fight for Xiao Yan. Bai Ying's heart immediately felt a solemnness when he heard these words of Sun Shua. If this was the case, the outcome of a fight between the two of them would be difficult to predict. However, haha, alright. Since brother Sun Shua wishes to fight, I will allow you to fight to your heart's content. However, you cannot blame me if your Sun clan is gone at that time. Following this, a cold laugh was once again emitted from Bai Ying's mouth. This caused Sun Shua, whose expression had just recovered, to become anxious once again. Although he did not wish to tear Bai Ying apart with his bare hands, he also knew that it would not be so easy for him to defeat Bai Ying. Moreover, if he were to really fight with Bai Ying, the large clan that he had painstakingly managed for many years in the city below would really be destroyed in a day. Bai Ying, you are using this to pressure me again. Haha, why? Does brother Sun Shua really not care about your clan? If that is the case, then come. It has indeed been a long time since I have had a good fight. I will take advantage of today's opportunity to let me see just how much your strength has grown over the years. Bai Ying wore a cold smile in the face of the ferocious face of Sun Shua. It was as if he did not care at all. Moreover, as he spat out these words, he clenched his large hand and a purple long spear landed in his hand. The tip of the spear was pointed directly at Sun Shua. The sharp tip of the spear was wrapped in do qi and reflected a sharp cold light, causing one to involuntarily feel a sense of danger. Sun Shua's eyes were filled with a struggle as he stared at the long spear in Bai Ying's hand. It was a long while later before he let out a cold snort. He waved his large hand and the viscous do qi that had gathered on the surface of his body gradually flowed into his body. Humph!
Fine, this time even if you win I can choose not to attack, but... Sun Shua spoke hatefully. Soon after, his gaze slowly shifted downwards.
He looked at the half-martial emperors on the ground in the city.
Right now, I will give you two choices. 1. Capture Xiao Yan. Regardless of whether he is dead or alive, as long as you capture him, I will give each of you 2 Tier 3 medicinal pellets as compensation. 2. You can choose not to attack, but today, none of you will be able to leave Coldstream City. Stay here forever and let the people outside know the consequences of disobeying my Sun Clan in Coldstream City.
Sun Shua's tone was cold and without the slightest trace of emotion. At this very moment, he no longer had the slightest bit of mercy in his heart toward those half-martial emperors of the Sun Clan.
To Sun Shua, his Sun family had already lost all face today. Secondly, the 9-star half-martial emperors below were the main culprits.
Furthermore, the anger in his heart was soaring.
Thus, how could he possibly be amiable with them? Hearing this, the half-martial emperors present immediately began to complain incessantly in their hearts. At this very moment, Sun Shua had already placed his blade on their necks. If they did not move, they would die. Of course, even though they knew that fighting against Xiao Yan would not end well, no matter what, it was still better than dying. At this moment, the gazes of everyone below were involuntarily directed toward Xiao Yan, who was in the sky. Their eyes were filled with helplessness, fear and traces of madness. After all, in exchange for death, if they were able to capture Xiao Yan, the rewards they would receive would also be extremely generous. 2 Tier 3 medicinal pellets. These were things that they would not be able to obtain even if they tried their best. If they were able to obtain one, the strength of these half-martial emperors present would increase by leaps and bounds. This involuntarily caused them to feel crazy. After sensing the numerous gazes from the half-martial emperors present, the expression in Xiao Yan's eyes had already recovered its calmness. After the Dou Di pressure had been blocked by Ying, the Dou Qi circulation speed in his body had already returned to normal.
If they were to fight now, Xiao Yan was not afraid of any of the half-martial emperors present.
Of course, he did not know just what kind of scene it would be if all the half-martial emperors below attacked together. Xiao Yan's heart carried a trace of curiosity and probing as he slowly raised his head. He discovered that Ying was currently looking at him with a smile that was not a smile. This scene involuntarily caused Xiao Yan to be secretly startled. Soon after, Xiao Yan once again exhaled deeply. A pair of golden eyes slowly shut. In the next moment, when his eyes were opened, a domineering voice was suddenly spat out from Xiao Yan's mouth. In that case, all of you can attack together. Chapter 587.
Everyone in the area was involuntarily stunned when Xiao Yan's words were emitted from his mouth.
Soon after, many pairs of eyes that were filled with shock landed on Xiao Yan's body. At this moment, the hearts of everyone present were filled with shock. They even doubted their own ears. No matter how they thought about it, Xiao Yan in front of them was actually this arrogant. Did he intend to rely on his own strength to fight against hundreds of bandy experts? Has this fellow gone crazy? Even if his fighting strength far exceeds experts of the same level, isn't this a little too arrogant? Hee, there is going to be a good show to watch now. Fighting against so many bandy experts at the same time. This brat either really possesses the strength to do so or he will only be seeking his own humiliation. Haha, if he really relies on his own strength to block these bandy experts or even defeat them, Xiao Yan's name will definitely resound throughout the entire western region from today onwards. This battle is extremely meaningful to this brat. A couple of elite Dou Dis stared at Xiao Yan in the distant empty space. The expression in each of their eyes was different. However, from the tone of their voices, all of them more or less held a doubtful attitude toward Xiao Yan. After all, Xiao Yan was currently facing hundreds of bandy experts. This kind of battle was something that even these elite Dou Di did not dare to believe in their hearts. How could Xiao Yan deal with them? At the same time, Ying and Sun Shua, who were standing a short distance away from Xiao Yan, involuntarily had a slight change in their expressions at this moment. Even the two of them did not expect that Xiao Yan would actually dare to say such words in front of everyone in Coldstream City. Immediately, Sun Shua's face involuntarily revealed a cold smile that contained ridicule. From Sun Shua's point of view, Xiao Yan was merely a 6-star bandy no matter how one looked at it. By relying on his strength to repeatedly suppress 2 9-star bandy experts, it was likely that Xiao Yan was no longer as relaxed as he appeared on the surface. However, he actually dared to boast so shamelessly. He was really asking for trouble. As for Bai Ying, for some unknown reason, he had other thoughts about Xiao Yan from the very beginning. Even though Xiao Yan's actions at this moment were really like a mayfly trying to shake a tree, Bai Ying's expression did not change. It was as though he also had the same confidence in Xiao Yan's victory. This caused Xiao Yan to feel extremely uncertain in his heart. Just what was Bai Ying planning? Ha 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 ha. Good. What a good Xiao Yan. You actually dare to speak such big words when you are about to die. Since you are so impatient to seek death, what are all of you waiting for? Fulfill his wish and attack together. As long as all of you are able to capture Xiao Yan for me, I will definitely fulfill all that I have said earlier. Sun Shua's sharp eyes swept over the group of bandy experts on the ground as the disdainful cold laughter sounded from his mouth. Immediately, the expressions of all the bandy experts who heard Sun Shua's words immediately became fiery hot. The earlier fear in their eyes when they looked at Xiao Yan was swiftly replaced by greed. Puff! Wave after wave of various colored dou qi surged out from the bodies of those bandy experts. Wave after wave of powerful auras swiftly gathered above everyone's heads. In the blink of an eye, the entire sky above Coldstream City was covered by an extremely powerful aura. This aura and pressure was gathered together by all the bandy experts in the city. In front of this powerful aura and pressure, even the few elite dodis, who were quite far away, could not help but have a slight change in expression at this moment. Although this aura was not enough to contend with the aura that they had agglomerated together, the aura that was agglomerated by all the bandy experts in the city could definitely be considered the strongest under the dodi class. The smile on Sun Shua's face became even colder when he sensed this. Although they had yet to truly attack, the current Sun Shua appeared to have already seen the appearance of Xiao Yan being stepped on by him. Waves of cold snorts were occasionally emitted from his nose. Numerous human figures swiftly rushed into the sky like falling stars. Immediately, they surrounded Xiao Yan, who had already dispersed the King Kong glass body. Numerous pairs of sharp gazes landed on Xiao Yan's body in an orderly manner. The greed in their eyes was self-evident. At the same time, there was also some fear mixed within. This manner appeared as though a pack of hungry wolves were staring at a lion. Although their hearts were filled with fear, their greedy hearts were urging them to challenge their limits. The expression on Xiao Yan's face gradually changed in the face of the increasing number of bandy experts around him. It was ice cold. A brilliant heavenly flame continued to rise within his dark black eyes. A thought passed through Xiao Yan's mind and a vast and mighty spiritual strength suddenly swept out from between his brows. It swiftly covered the entire place. At this moment, every action of every bandy expert was clearly reflected in Xiao Yan's mind. Xiao Yan was non-committal in his heart as he sensed the powerful aura and pressure that descended from above his head. A couple of years ago, he had already contended with the aura and pressure of an elite dodi. At this moment, this seemingly powerful aura and pressure was not even worth mentioning in front of Xiao Yan. Humph! A low and deep cold snort was emitted. Xiao Yan's body, which was standing in the air, immediately shook violently. A thought passed through his mind and the strength of the dragon phoenix bloodline that was hidden deep within his body immediately erupted. Purple gold blood agglomerated into a purple gold blood dragon within the blood vessels within Xiao Yan's body. Soon after, the blood dragon began to wildly flow through all of Xiao Yan's blood vessels. At the same time, waves of surging energy were transmitted to all of Xiao Yan's limbs and bones. When that surging energy poured into Xiao Yan's body, Xiao Yan was unable to resist letting out a long and earth-shaking roar toward the sky. Waves of dragon roars were mixed within his roar, causing one's heart to tremble upon hearing it. At the same time, the aura on Xiao Yan's body suddenly soared. In the blink of an eye, Xiao Yan's strength had increased from the initial stage of a 6-star half-martial emperor to the middle stage of a 6-star half-martial emperor. This scene caused the hearts of everyone, who had sensed this, to tremble once again. Soon after, a thought passed through Xiao Yan's mind and an even more frightening aura and pressure immediately erupted from Xiao Yan's body. It was like an enormous invisible dragon that soared into the sky. In the blink of an eye, it forcefully suppressed the aura and pressure of the several hundred bandy experts in the sky above him. What? The appearance of this scene caused everyone present to involuntarily be startled in their hearts. Their mouths involuntarily let out an exclamation. At this moment, the hearts of everyone in Coldstream City were filled with a deep shock. At this moment, everyone in the sky revealed stunned expressions as they looked at Xiao Yan in the sky.
It was difficult to imagine just how powerful Xiao Yan was. He was actually able to suppress such a frightening aura and pressure by himself. Was this Xiao Yan really only a bandit? At this moment, even those elite Dou-Di's faces were filled with shock. As for Sun Shua, the savage smile that he originally revealed on his face had already become as dark and deep as a pool of deep water the moment Xiao Yan displayed his powerful strength.
Chapter 588.
Humph.
This is merely an imposing pressure. It does not prove anything. Everyone, attack together.
With the strength of so many of us, there will be a moment when his Dou-Chi is exhausted no matter how strong his fighting strength is. When that time comes, it will be the moment of Xiao Yan's death. Even though the pressure that Xiao Yan displayed was quite strong, it was still unable to suppress the greed in the hearts of these half-emperors. For the sake of a Tier 2 medicinal pill, the things that they could do would be even crazier than one could imagine. Even if they knew in their hearts that they were no match for Xiao Yan in front of them, with a Tier 2 medicinal pill in front of them, it was sufficient to push them to the edge of a blade. Sure enough, when the first shout sounded, various loud shouts that added fuel to the fire followed one after another. In the blink of an eye, the atmosphere between the heaven and earth once again became tense. The eyes of the hundreds of half-emperors were like greedy wolves as they stared intently at Xiao Yan. Turbulent Dou-Chi wildly surged on the surface of their bodies. Numerous Dou-Chi light pillars shot towards the sky with an imposing manner. Each and every one of them revealed their own weapons. They were either blades or swords. In fact, there were even some strange weapons that no one knew the name of. However, even so, those weapons that appeared to be insignificant, in the hands of these half-martial emperors, had become sharp killing weapons. Following the eruption of Xiao Yan's aura, the atmosphere in the sky became tense and quiet. No one chose to be the first to attack. Even though they were only facing Xiao Yan alone, everyone appeared as though they were facing a large army. Ha! Xiao Yan, prepare to die. Until a certain moment, an old man holding an enormous sword in the empty space suddenly let out a stern cry. Dou-Chi surged and the quiet and heavy atmosphere in the square was broken at this moment. As the large sword in his hand danced, his body moved and instantly disappeared in front of the crowd. All that was left was an almost solid afterimage. It only gradually disappeared a couple of breaths later. Soon after, the empty space in front of Xiao Yan suddenly became distorted. The old man, who had disappeared from the spot earlier, appeared. At the same time, the enormous sword in his hand was raised high above his head. A dazzling golden light shot out from the enormous sword. It was just like a bright sun, causing one to be unable to open their eyes. Sword of the Corona. As the golden light shot out, the old man let out an earth-shaking roar. The huge sword in his hand viciously fell down at this moment. The dazzling golden light carried an incomparably sharp aura as it mercilessly fell towards Xiao Yan. However, the next moment, Xiao Yan's hand trembled slightly, and the pitch-black dark heavy buster sword immediately fell into his hand. With a thought, the gorgeous mysterious fire instantly wrapped around the huge buster sword. Sevenfold heaven-breaking ruler. 1 Qi. He let out a low cry in his heart. The heavy Shen ruler, which was wrapped in the heavenly flame in his hand, was lifted. In the next instant, it violently collided with the incoming huge golden sword. However, before the collision between the two ended, numerous human figures swiftly flashed and appeared around Xiao Yan. Their hands were holding various weapons as they displayed their Dou skills and violently attacked Xiao Yan. Humph! Seeing that, Xiao Yan couldn't help but let out a cold snort from his nose. A chilling glint shot out from his eyes. The huge buster sword in his hand started to spin, and in the blink of an eye, it continuously and violently swung out a few more qi. 2 qi.
3 qi. 4 qi. 5 qi. 6 qi. 7 qi. Fierce shouts continued to ring out in Xiao Yan's heart. Ruler lights shot out violently and blocked all of the half-martial emperors that were attacking him. However, at the same time, a 9-star half-martial emperor among the crowd went around the ruler lights, passed through the crowd, and arrived in front of Xiao Yan. With a twist of his wrist, a short black dagger appeared in the sleeve of this 9-star half-martial emperor. Twisting his body at an extremely strange angle, this 9-star half-martial emperor successfully avoided Xiao Yan's line of sight, and rapidly approached Xiao Yan's body. The short dagger in his sleeve slightly flashed, and with the infusion of his Dou Qi, it was like a black snake as it violently attacked, and ruthlessly pierced towards Xiao Yan's chest. Ding! However, the result was an extremely clear sound of metal colliding. At the same time, on Xiao Yan's chest, sparks burst forth. The black cloak on his body was torn apart, revealing the body of Xiao Yan that was covered by purple gold dragon scales.
Seeing this scene, this 9-star half-martial emperor was greatly alarmed. However, before his expression could change, the huge buster sword that was covered in flames had already heavily smashed into his face.
Bang! With a violent bang, the short dagger in the old man's hand immediately lost control and fell from his hand. At the same time, the old man's body was also uncontrollably sent flying. Everywhere he passed, blood splattered. Humph! Did you really think that I didn't detect you? Playing this sort of trick of concealment before an alchemist, you are truly courting death. With a cold snort from his mouth, Xiao Yan swept his gaze around. The surrounding half-martial emperors had already loudly shouted as they charged over once again. Seeing this, Xiao Yan's eyes narrowed.
He forcefully waved the huge buster sword in his hand and his feet fiercely stomped on the air.
As power erupted, Xiao Yan's body also suddenly shot forth.
Holding the huge buster sword in his hand, he ferociously charged towards the incoming half-martial emperors.
Bang! 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 Compared to the old man from before, the current Xiao Yan was even more direct.
As the huge buster sword in his hand descended, it would send a half-martial emperor flying.
Immediately after, another half-martial emperor would follow closely behind. Soon after, the same scene continuously appeared in the sky. Even though he was facing 2 or even more half-martial emperors at the same time, Xiao Yan was still extremely tyrannical. With a twist of his body, the sky annihilation steps was practically used to its limits. Before those half-martial emperors could clearly see Xiao Yan's body, they were already ruthlessly sent flying by the gorgeous buster sword. After those half-martial emperors used all their strength to ruthlessly pierce through Xiao Yan's body with their weapons, they discovered that there was not a single trace of blood on their weapons. In fact, even the Xiao Yan that their weapons had pierced through earlier had quietly disappeared. Never would they have imagined that as Xiao Yan continued to fall from the huge buster sword, the Xiao Yan that everyone thought had been injured was actually only his afterimage. Before Xiao Yan's frightening demon-like speed, even with the strength of a 9-star half-martial emperor, they were actually unable to withstand more than a few attacks. Several hundred half-martial emperors. Originally, they thought that they would be able to crush Xiao Yan. However, at this moment, the situation was completely different. 1 buster for each person. 1 buster for each person. At this moment, Xiao Yan was like an undefeatable war god. Even a 9-star half-martial emperor would suffer a crushing defeat under Xiao Yan's huge buster sword.
In the blink of an eye, half of the several hundred half-martial emperors present had already been seriously injured by Xiao Yan's heavy buster sword.
Only at this moment did everyone gradually wake up. The strength of the Xiao Yan in front of them was not something that they could guess. Currently, it was likely that in the entire Coldstream City, there was no one else other than these Dodi present who could defeat Xiao Yan.
Outside of the battleground, those few Dodis had stunned expressions on their faces at this moment. It was a long while later before they involuntarily faced each other. They recalled the various guesses that they had about Xiao Yan earlier. At this moment, they involuntarily shook their heads and laughed bitterly. On the other side, Bai Ying and Sun Shuo were also incomparably shocked in their hearts. This was especially the case for Sun Shuo. At the same time that he was shocked by Xiao Yan's shocking fighting strength, an extremely furious anger also swiftly surged from the bottom of his heart. Chapter 589. A bleak, cold wind swept across the world. Above their heads, the blazing sun that was clearly scorching hot also appeared incomparably dim at this moment. The air was filled with a faint bitter smell. This was not an actual smell. Instead, it was a feeling of helplessness mixed with despair. This bitterness came from the depths of one's heart. It seemed to be despair, but also fear. Between the heavens and the earth, countless desolate gazes with various expressions stared at the black figure standing proudly between the heavens and the earth, as well as the large black ruler in his hand. Everyone's gazes were filled with shock, fear and despair. Who would have thought that a person who appeared to be one of the weakest in this world would be able to suppress all of them, hundreds of half-emperors? Even though they had used all their strength, they were still unable to cause any ripples in the eyes of this black-robed young man. Even though he had already defeated so many half-emperors, Xiao Yan's eyes were still completely calm at this moment. The situation before his eyes seemed to be within reason. However, he did not know just how shocking all of this was in the eyes of everyone in the city. Bang! With a twist of his wrist, the large ruler swept across. A 9-star half-emperor was once again mercilessly sent flying by Xiao Yan. When the bang was heard, the 9-star half-emperor's complexion had already turned deathly pale. After receiving such a heavy blow, this 9-star half-emperor could not help but spit out a large mouthful of blood. At the same time, his body was also sent flying uncontrollably. The originally dense dou qi in his body had been forcefully scattered by Xiao Yan's large ruler. For a short period of time, he was no longer able to control it. After doing all this, Xiao Yan finally slowly raised his eyes. His pair of dark black eyes reflected a beautiful fiery light. When Xiao Yan's gaze swept over the remaining dozens of half-emperors, everyone involuntarily trembled as they swiftly withdrew. The hearts of those who were looked at by Xiao Yan were swiftly filled with an icy chill. Cold sweat involuntarily surged out from all over their bodies. The fear in their hearts was self-evident. At this moment, Xiao Yan was just like a god of death to them. Even though he had not truly killed anyone, the dignity in the hearts of all the half-emperors present had been completely destroyed under his overbearing and sharp might. Who? Only at this moment did Xiao Yan's tensed body relax slightly. Immediately, a feeling of weakness immediately surged out from deep within his body. Xiao Yan's expression, which had not changed for nearly 2 hours, finally revealed a paleness at this moment. Even though Xiao Yan's fighting strength had become extremely strong after being in his peak condition for such a long period of time, allowing him to suppress the hundreds of half-emperors present, it would definitely bring about a long period of low point after this. The appearance of this scene immediately caused joy to swiftly surge into the hearts of all the half-emperors present. They did not expect that Xiao Yan, who had been strong for 2 hours, would ultimately have such a moment of weakness. Ha 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 ha. The opportunity has come. I thought that this fellow was really undefeatable. It turns out that he was merely pretending to be strong and putting on an act. Humph humph. Now is the time for us to finish you off. Ha 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 ha. Immediately, the dozens of half-emperors surrounding Xiao Yan, whose faces were originally filled with fear, suddenly revealed a crazed expression on their faces. The change in Xiao Yan's expression seemed to have allowed them to see the dawn of victory. In the blink of an eye, the dozens of half-emperors' expressions immediately became excited. Even the dou qi within their bodies became even more turbulent at this moment. Haha! This kid is almost at his limit. Let's all attack together. As long as we continue to exhaust him for a little longer, he will definitely become our prisoner. Haha! Tier 2 medicinal pill. I will soon be able to obtain a Tier 2 medicinal pill. Haha, Xiao Yan, don't blame us for being too ruthless. We won't care if you accidentally die. Haha. As the continuous loud laughter sounded, a portion of the half-emperors in the sky who had originally planned to withdraw turned their gazes back at this moment. Even those half-emperors who had been smashed down by Xiao Yan's heavy Shen Buster sword all leaped up from the ground. Each of them forcefully supported their bodies. With a thought, the dou qi within their bodies once again surged out. Numerous sharp gazes shot toward Xiao Yan in succession. Countless gazes were filled with greed. Under the illumination of the sunlight, the weapons in their hands reflected a cold luster. Unknowingly, even the air was filled with a faint smell of blood. It was as if an invisible battle was silently taking place. Ha! Xiao Yan, prepare to die. Until a certain moment, an expert whose strength had reached the peak of the late-stage half-martial emperor realm suddenly moved. The pair of curved blades in his hands immediately cut through the air. Blade light shot out as they ruthlessly slashed toward Xiao Yan. Following closely behind, nearly 100 figures also moved. Each and every one of them had carefully and rapidly shot toward Xiao Yan. As they waved their weapons, countless streams of dou qi streaked across the sky like meteors. With the momentum of a combined attack, they ruthlessly smashed toward Xiao Yan. At this very moment, Xiao Yan, who was surrounded by everyone, had a calm expression on his face. Not the slightest ripple could be seen in his pitch-black eyes. In the depths of his eyes, a gorgeous flame gradually condensed into a flaming wheel that slowly rotated. Following closely, Xiao Yan ignored the 100 figures that were explosively rushing toward him. Instead, with a thought, a gorgeous heavenly flame rose from his palm with a puff sound. Following the change in his thoughts, the heavenly flame rapidly condensed in Xiao Yan's palm. At the same time, the dou qi within the vortex within Xiao Yan's body also crazily surged out of his body at this moment as if it was free of charge. It turned into many streams of fire that were as thick as a person's wrist. They revolved around Xiao Yan's body and rapidly gathered toward the flaming wheel in his palm. Soon after, when the countless streams of dou qi streaks arrived within 100 feet of Xiao Yan's body, the calm expression on Xiao Yan's face suddenly became fierce. Immediately, his extended hand suddenly clenched. The flaming wheel in his hand that had yet to completely condense was violently held by Xiao Yan in his palm. With a thought, the remaining dou qi in Xiao Yan's body completely gushed out from his palm and swiftly poured into the flaming wheel in Xiao Yan's hand. The next moment, when Xiao Yan slowly raised his eyes, the expression on his pale face had become indifferent and even icy cold. At the same time, Xiao Yan's tightly clenched hand slowly opened. A gorgeous flaming wheel the size of a palm appeared in Xiao Yan's palm. Buddha's Fury. Reincarnation. Chapter 590. Buddha's Fury. Reincarnation. At the same time Xiao Yan's mouth slowly spat out words that were filled with indifference, the fire wheel in his hand also emitted a dazzling glow at the next moment. The brilliant flame soared to the sky and filled the sky with a burning momentum. At this moment, everyone in Coldstream City involuntarily revealed a deep fear in their eyes when they looked at Xiao Yan. Even those elite Dou-Di's faces were incomparably shocked at this moment. Unlike before, the Dou skill that was agglomerated in Xiao Yan's hand at this moment caused them to feel fear and shock from the bottom of their hearts. They could clearly sense that this fire wheel was filled with an extremely overbearing strength. The destruction that this strength contained was sufficient to cause these elite Dou-Di to feel fear in their hearts. Just who is this brat? How can he possess such a frightening Dou skill? It is fortunate that his current strength is only that of a Bandi. If it was an expert of the same level as us, a Dou skill of this level would likely be enough to kill us. His identity is definitely not simple. By being able to possess such outstanding training talent and possess such a frightening Dou skill, this fellow is definitely not an ordinary person. There is definitely an even greater backer behind him. Fortunately we did not act. Otherwise, the few elite Dou-Dis in the distance involuntarily faced each other as they thought of the somewhat frightening result. The expression in their eyes also appeared to be a little afraid. If Xiao Yan, who was in front of them at this moment, was really someone with an extraordinary identity, they really could not afford to offend him. After all, even though they were elite Dou-Dis, they similarly had difficulty protecting themselves on this continent. The Yuanwu continent was very large. A Dou-Di did not represent anything. When faced with some truly powerful clans or factions, even if they were as strong as a Dou-Di, they were still like ants in front of those factions. The Yuanwu continent was very large. There were many people who were stronger than elite Dou-Di. Being overly arrogant would only speed up one's destruction. Perhaps the battle between the Sun and Bai clans would be the beginning of their destruction. The few elite Dou-Di in the distance involuntarily had the intention to withdraw when they thought of this. They exchanged a couple of glances with each other before quietly withdrawing the aura that they had emitted. There were even some who had turned around and quietly left this place. Unfamiliar enemies were the most dangerous. Although Xiao Yan's name had spread throughout the western regions, no one knew who he was or where he came from. Although the rewards offered by the four great sects were extremely tempting, not everyone would go crazy for it. There were many people who licked blood from their blades, but there were also people who truly cultivated. A moment of greed could destroy everything in an instant, including your loved ones. However, a steady state of mind could allow you to sail the boat far away and not capsize in the gutter. Pang 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 pang. Soon after, when the angry Buddha reincarnation in Xiao Yan's hand completely erupted, the dark black light pillar had the power to break the sky. It easily destroyed the Dou-Qi pillars that shot toward him. Soon after, without waiting for the elite Dou-Di to recover, the cold and indifferent dark black light pillar had already swept over their bodies in an instant. The terrifying aura of destruction immediately penetrated the bodies of those who were swept by the black beam of light. They could only feel the aura of death rapidly approaching their souls. At the same time, they could clearly see that the parts of their bodies that were swept by the black beam of light actually began to disintegrate in a strange manner. That's right. Under the black light, everyone's skin gradually began to crack. It was just like tree bark that had been dried by the sun. It swiftly fell off from their bodies at a speed visible to the naked eye. After which, it was the flesh below until the dense white bones. Even a portion of the bones had similarly turned into powder under the black light. Ah! Everything would fall apart under the black light pillar. In the blink of an eye, an endless amount of painful screams resounded in this empty space.
The bodies that were disintegrated by the black light did not feel the slightest pain. All they could feel was an empty space.
However, it was also because of this that the disappearance of feeling caused the hearts of these people to feel even more terrified.
Unknowingly, it seemed that they had already fallen into the abyss of death. Dying without feeling anything was the most frightening thing in one's heart. After all, death might not be frightening, but the process was extremely frightening.
Within a short few breaths' time, those who were struck by the angry Buddha reincarnation fell from the sky with a weak aura.
After which, they violently smashed into the city below. The destructive strength of the angry Buddha reincarnation might be silent, but it was so silent that it was frightening.
This kind of strange silence caused the hearts of those who came into contact with it to tremble.
At this moment, even with Sun Shua's and Bai Ying's mental fortitude, their expressions involuntarily changed.
After sensing the strangeness of the black light, the two of them could not help but quietly look at each other.
Even they did not expect that the Xiao Yan in front of them would actually be able to control such a frightening strength. The strangeness of this strength was something that even with their experience, they did not know about. What exactly is this brat's dough technique? Why is it so strange? No matter what, even if I have to fight it out with this fellow today, I must leave Xiao Yan here.
If I have this dough technique, humph, forget about being the leader of the 4 great clans, it is likely that my Sun clan will even have a place in the elder seat of the Sky Sword sect in the future.
Although he was surprised by Xiao Yan's dough technique, at this moment, Sun Shua's heart was filled with greed.
After all, if he was able to master such a strange dough technique, would it not mean that all the elite Dou Di who fought against him would be disintegrated to death by this dough technique once he used it? At that time, forget about Dou Di, it was likely that he, Sun Shua, would even have the ability to fight against an origin transformation expert.
The greed in Sun Shua's heart grew as he thought of this.
He let out a low roar in his heart and the Dou Qi in his body was instantly raised.
He completely ignored Bai Ying, whose expression had changed in an instant. His strong body suddenly moved and swiftly approached Xiao Yan with a lightning-like speed. At the same time, Xiao Yan also swiftly discovered Sun Shua's actions. Seeing this, Xiao Yan's heart felt incomparably solemn.
He could not be bothered about anything else as the angry Buddha reincarnation in his hand was instantly pointed at Sun Shua. At the same time, the little Dou Qi in his body poured out and poured into the fire wheel in his hand.
Angry Buddha reincarnation. Block for me. Xiao Yan let out a low cry in his heart. His expression became incomparably solemn. At the same time, all the strength in his body was poured into the angry Buddha reincarnation.
At this moment, the only thing that Xiao Yan could hope for was the angry Buddha reincarnation in his hand.
Bang!
With the pouring in of Dou Qi, the originally 100-foot-thick black pillar of light swelled with the wind in the blink of an eye, becoming a 1,000-foot-thick pillar of light.
At the same time, the strength on it also became even more terrifying. In the blink of an eye, it had already violently smashed into Sun Shua's body. The moment the dark black light came into contact with Sun Shua's body, it immediately surged into his body. In front of this black light, even though Sun Shua had the Dou Qi protecting his body, he was similarly unable to completely block it outside.
In the blink of an eye, Sun Shua had already discovered to his shock that the long robe at his chest had actually turned into nothingness under this black light. At the same time, the skin on his chest had unknowingly festered to the size of a palm.
How is this possible? This scene caused shock to rise in Sun Shua's heart. It was difficult to imagine that under this black light, even his physical body could not avoid being decomposed and dissipated. Chapter 591. What a strange Dou technique. It can even break down this D's Dou Qi. Sun Shua's sharp eyes suddenly shrunk as he sensed that the Dou Qi light barrier around him was disappearing at an extremely slow rate. The shock in his heart was difficult to describe. This strange Dou technique in front of him could be said to be something that Sun Shua had never seen before in his life. It was able to forcefully break down an opponent's Dou Qi. Under normal circumstances, unless one's strength far exceeded the opponent's, one would not be able to break down the Dou Qi that another person had refined. However, at this moment, this kind of scene that was logically impossible had actually appeared in front of Sun Shua. This caused him to feel shocked in his heart. At the same time, Bai Ying on the other side also discovered that something was not right. He frowned slightly but did not hurry to attack. Instead, a thought passed through his mind and his spiritual strength spread out. It surrounded the black light pillar that had struck Sun Shua's body and carefully probed it. Hiss! Soon after,
Bai Ying's spiritual strength approached the black light pillar. Bai Ying clearly sensed an extremely strange suction force surging out of the black light pillar. In front of the suction force, Bai Ying's spiritual strength seemed to have been pulled. Even though Bai Ying withdrew it in time, there were still a couple of threads of spiritual strength that were swallowed by the black light pillar. Being the master, Bai Ying was also implicated when his spiritual strength was swallowed. A piercing pain was transmitted from deep within his soul, causing the expression on Bai Ying's face to become slightly distorted. What? Bai Ying's mouth involuntarily inhaled a breath of cool air as he exclaimed. His body, which was standing in the air, involuntarily took half a step back. His face was stunned as he looked at Xiao Yan. More accurately speaking, it was the Do technique that he had used at this moment, Angry Buddha Reincarnation. What kind of ghost Do technique is this? Why is it so strange? It is actually able to swallow my spiritual strength. Bai Ying's face still had some lingering fear as he stared at the dark black light pillar. His heart involuntarily felt extremely shocked. At the same time, his eyes, which were looking at Xiao Yan, also had an unusual glint. A mere Ban Di already possessed a strength that could shock an elite Do Di. It was difficult to imagine just how strong he would be once he stepped into the elite Do Di class in the future. This time, I'm afraid the four great sects have kicked an iron plate. Bai Ying couldn't help but feel a sense of seriousness that he had never felt before. However, in the blink of an eye, a dark light flashed in the depths of his eyes and disappeared. Although the four great sects had kicked an iron plate, if the Bai family could be careful, then the one who had the last laugh might be the Bai family. The rise of the small characters might have depended on the fall of these big characters. The Western region has remained unchanged for hundreds of years. Now, it's time for a great reshuffle. After recovering, Bai Ying's eyes slowly narrowed into a thin line. His eyes revealed a solemn expression as he stared at Xiao Yan. It was a long while later before he once again looked at Sun Shua. His eyes flickered slightly as the Do Qi in his body quietly circulated. At the same time, Sun Shua, who was doing his best to block the black light pillar in front of him, had an increasingly gloomy expression on his face. Even though he was an elite Do Di, he still felt his heart tremble in fear in the face of this strange Do technique. He had never heard of such a strange Do technique existing on the Origin Martial continent. Xiao Yan, what Do technique is this? Sun Shua's face was ferocious as he stared at Xiao Yan. His tone was extremely low and deep as he spoke. Angry Buddha Reincarnation. Xiao Yan merely replied with an extremely indifferent tone in the face of this. The instant the words from his mouth sounded, the enormous dark black light pillar that he was controlling in his hand suddenly trembled. Immediately, an even stronger aura was emitted from it. The expression on Sun Shua's face involuntarily changed once again. Under this dark black light pillar, even he felt a resistance at this moment. At the same time that his expression changed slightly, a fury also swiftly surged into Sun Shua's heart. As an elite Do Di, he was actually blocked by a Ban Di class brat today. If news of this were to spread, he, Sun Shua, would become the laughingstock of others. How would his Sun clan be able to stand among the four great clans in the future? Roar! Thinking of this in his heart, the fury in Sun Shua's chest was immediately unable to be suppressed. He could no longer endure it and emitted an earth-shaking furious roar. His tiger body shook. Immediately, turbulent surging Do Qi crazily surged out from Sun Shua's body. The vast and mighty aura caused the entire area to involuntarily emit waves of trembling sounds. Ha! Sun Shua's sleeves were suddenly waved. The surging Do Qi immediately transformed into a terrifying force that connected the sky and the earth. It carried a sharp overbearing aura as it violently smashed into the dark black light pillar in front of him. Bang! An intense explosion shook the heavens and the earth. In front of the powerful Do Qi of a Do Di, even Xiao Yan's angry Buddha reincarnation had difficulty enduring. With just one strike, Xiao Yan's angry Buddha reincarnation was forcefully shattered by nearly 1,000 feet. Even the current Xiao Yan's face could not help but instantly turn pale. A muffled groan was emitted from his throat. A trace of fresh blood slowly flowed down from the corner of his mouth. As for the remaining blood, it was forcefully swallowed back by him. Xiao Yan understood that the more it was at this moment, the more he could not show weakness. Otherwise, it was likely that he would not be able to leave this place today. Thinking of this, Xiao Yan involuntarily glanced at Bai Ying, who was standing in the distance. He did not know why,
but he had actually placed his hopes on this fellow. Even though Bai Ying was also one of the 4 great clans, Xiao Yan could vaguely sense that Bai Ying had no intention of harming him. On the contrary, Bai Ying had even helped him block Sun Shuo, who had long since planned to attack him. Even though Xiao Yan did not know just what Bai Ying's intentions were, from the looks of it, Bai Ying was the only other person present who could help him other than Gu Yu. Of course, this was on the precondition that Bai Ying was truly willing to help him. Otherwise, even if Xiao Yan was able to leave Coldstream City, it was likely that he would have entered the wolf's den after leaving the tiger's den. Bang bang bang. A couple of consecutive explosions sounded. Only then did Xiao Yan swiftly recover. However, in the blink of an eye, Sun Shuo had already appeared in front of him. His face was vicious and a fierce glint appeared in his sharp eyes. An ice-cold killing intent appeared to be substance-like as it pierced one's skin until it hurt. Sun Shuo raised his hand and his palm violently landed on Xiao Yan's head. Humph, so what if your Do Chi is strange? It is merely a small trick in front of this D's absolute strength. Now, it is time for you to die. Chapter 592. The wind horn continued to sound in the empty sky. The scorching hot sunlight gradually dimmed. The cloudless blue sky had unknowingly become deep and serene. It was as though it was just before dawn and also as though it was close to dusk. The soundless sound still clearly reverberated in the minds of everyone in Coldstream City. At this moment, everyone's eyes were staring blankly at the dark black figure in the sky. Everyone's face revealed an expression of disbelief. The shock in their hearts caused this group of people to be unable to spit out a single word even though their mouths were wide open. Even though there were a few people who wanted to say something, the words that they had prepared were forcefully stuck in their throats. Their lips and teeth trembled for a long while, but they were unable to spit out a single word. At this moment, even the few elite Do Di standing in the distant empty space had a dull expression on their faces. Even they did not expect that the black-robed young man in front of them would actually once again break their understanding of him. This fellow. What was that earlier? What a strange strength. It is different from Do Chi and spiritual strength. That thing, could it be? It is the strength of the Great Way. The few elite Do Di's eyes stared intently at the black robe on Xiao Yan's body. Their eyes were filled with shock. It was difficult to imagine that Xiao Yan, whose strength had clearly not reached the Do Di class, was actually able to control the strength of the Great Way. This brat is indeed not an ordinary person. We must not become enemies with him. Tisk tsk. He has already comprehended the strength of the Great Way when he is merely a bandit. This Xiao Yan's future is limitless. Humph humph. He has already comprehended the strength of the Great Way when he is only a bandit. He is even fearless when being captured by the 4 great sects. I'm afraid that even a ghost would not believe that there is no one behind him. After the shock, many exclamations that were filled with various meanings quickly followed. In short, the meaning behind the words of these few elite Do Di was that they would not become enemies with Xiao Yan. Or perhaps, it could be said that they did not dare to become enemies with him. In the sky, Bai Ying narrowed his eyes as he stared closely at Xiao Yan. He was also extremely shocked. He had never thought that Xiao Yan had actually grasped the power of laws. Even though he did not know what the power of laws belonged to, the fact that Xiao Yan had comprehended the power of laws was enough to shock him. Xiao Yan, oh Xiao Yan, who exactly are you? First you have such a strange Do skill, and now you have the great Dao energy. You are really a person that is filled with secrets. Fortunately, I am not interested in your secrets. Bai Ying muttered softly in his heart. His gaze suddenly turned and landed on Sun Shuo's body. Bai Ying's mouth involuntarily emitted a cold mocking laugh when he saw half of Sun Shuo's swollen face. He did not expect that this Sun Shuo, whom even he had difficulty injuring, would actually be ruthlessly slapped in the face by Xiao Yan's hands. This time around he, Sun Shuo, could truly be considered to have lost all his face. Humph! Hearing Bai Ying's cold laughter, a fury immediately rose in Sun Shuo's heart. The expression on his face had just changed when a hissing sound was emitted from his mouth. This once again attracted Bai Ying's mocking laughter. Bastard! Dang! As the fury in his heart writhed, Sun Shuo forcefully endured the intense pain that was transmitted from his face. He spat out some words of hatred in an unclear manner. His body suddenly shook and viscous liquid-like Do Chi immediately surged out of his body. As the Do Chi writhed, the surrounding space involuntarily fluctuated intensely. Roar! Soon after,
A vague low roar was emitted from Sun Shua's mouth. He waved his large hand and a suction force surged from his palm. On the ground, the enormous sword that had been blasted down because of the attack earlier seemed to have been attracted by something at this moment. The body of the sword that was inserted deep into the ground suddenly trembled intensely. With a bang sound, it charged out of the ground and returned to Sun Shua's hand in the blink of an eye. Just as he was about to move, however, the expression in Sun Shua's eyes suddenly froze in the next moment. Even his breathing involuntarily turned sluggish. A pair of sharp eyes immediately opened in fury. Other than shock, there was an increasingly turbulent fury in the depths of his eyes. At this moment, one could see that the originally sharp and straight edge of the enormous sword that had returned to his hand actually had a gap of 1 to 2 centimeters. This sword of Sun Shua's was not made from ordinary materials. An ordinary attack would not be able to cause even the slightest damage to it, much less leave behind such a large gap. This kind of gap was likely something that even Bai Ying, who was also a 3-star Do-D, would not be able to leave behind. In the earlier collision, Sun Shua was clearly aware that this enormous sword of his did not suffer any damage. At this moment, however, a gap had appeared on this sword. It was obvious that this gap was definitely left behind in the collision earlier. The appearance of the gap on the enormous sword caused the fury in Sun Shua's heart to explode. The Xiao Yan in front of him had truly reached the point where he must kill him. No matter what happened today, he would not allow Xiao Yan to leave this place alive. Ah, dang! An earth-shaking furious cry was emitted from Sun Shua's mouth. This time around, Sun Shua completely suppressed the intense pain that was transmitted from his face. He waved his large hand and his right hand held the hilt of the enormous sword in a reverse grip. The wide, enormous sword rotated in his hand as Sun Shua's feet suddenly stepped on empty air. The empty space under his feet collapsed and Sun Shua had already disappeared from his original spot in an instant. At the same time, the expression on Xiao Yan's face suddenly changed. He waved the enormous ruler in his hand and his body swiftly flew back. However, Sun Shua's speed was even faster than Xiao Yan's. Just as Xiao Yan retreated explosively, Sun Shua's figure had already appeared in front of Xiao Yan. At the same time, the wide, enormous sword violently tore through the empty space. The sharp edge of the sword had already arrived in front of Xiao Yan's neck. It was only a few inches away from Xiao Yan's throat. Suddenly, Xiao Yan's originally pale face became even more ghastly at this moment. The hairs on his body stood on end and the heart in his chest was also violently beating. He let out a low cry in his heart before he viciously waved the enormous ruler in his hand. Clang! As the heavy blade of the ruler streaked across the empty space, it brought along a piercing sound of wind breaking. Just as the enormous sword was about to slash Xiao Yan's throat, it was only barely able to force the blow back. However, even so, the invisible force had similarly left a shallow wound on Xiao Yan's neck. Sensing the slight pain that was transmitted from his throat, Xiao Yan's heart was suddenly startled. His body swiftly and violently pulled back. However, Sun Shua in front of him was like a maggot attached to a bone as he chased closely without giving up. Clang! A frighteningly large force was transmitted over. The heavy Shen ruler in Xiao Yan's hand was forcefully deflected by the enormous sword. Killing intent surged in Sun Shua's eyes. He twisted his wrist and the enormous sword in his hand took the opportunity to pierce through the empty space. It once again ruthlessly pierced towards Xiao Yan's throat. In the face of this attack, Xiao Yan really had no way of dodging. In the next moment, before Xiao Yan could do anything, Bai Ying, who had been waiting by the side for a long time, suddenly attacked. He waved his sleeve and Do Qi swept out. A long spear covered in lightning suddenly shot out. It was like a thunderbolt that arrived between Xiao Yan and Sun Shua in the blink of an eye. It forced back the enormous sword with one strike. After which, Bai Ying's body flashed and arrived in front of Xiao Yan. With his back facing Sun Shua, Bai Ying ignored the other party and looked directly at Xiao Yan. Without much hesitation, Bai Ying grabbed the collar at Xiao Yan's chest and swiftly flew out of Coldstream City. In the blink of an eye, they had already disappeared from the sight of everyone in the city. After which, Sun Shua ruthlessly shattered the long spear in front of him with a blow. It turned into a dense Do Qi that gradually dissipated. However, when he turned his gaze around, he was shocked to discover that Xiao Yan and Bai Ying had already disappeared before his eyes. Bai Ying! Bai Ying! Bai Ying! An earth-shaking roar resounded across the sky like thunder. In the distant empty space,
Bai Ying could clearly hear Uncle Sun's roar. However, he merely laughed coldly. With one hand controlling Xiao Yan, his body moved and swiftly flew towards the south. He knew that he and Xiao Yan were currently too close to Coldstream City. If Sun Shua intended to investigate, he would definitely be able to find their direction. Now, the only thing they could do was to leave this place first in order to completely escape the Sun Clan. Chapter 593. It was nighttime. There were a lot of dark clouds in the night, so much so that the moon hanging in the sky was covered by the dark clouds. There was not a single trace of light between heaven and earth. It was like a pure black curtain that covered the entire world. A biting cold wind blew between the heavens and the earth. Above the pitch-black forest, one could clearly hear the sound of waves crashing against the rocks. In the pitch-black night, coupled with the bone-chilling cold wind, anyone who stood here would probably be unable to help but shiver. Look at the sky. It seems like there's going to be a storm. In the sky above a certain forest, an old man whose appearance could not be seen clearly was standing at the top of a huge tree. A large wave of trees surged around him. Strangely, the waves of trees would automatically disperse when they came within 100 feet of the old man. Upon closer inspection, even the huge tree under the old man's feet did not seem to be affected by the surrounding cold wind at all. The huge tree did not move at all, and its entire body was like a statue. If it was not for the life aura that it emitted, no one would believe that this tree would not move at all under the biting cold wind. Of course, rather than saying that the tree did not move, it would be more accurate to say that the old man whose appearance could not be seen clearly did not move at all. That's good too. This world has been peaceful for too long. Those withered trees that should have fallen long ago should indeed fall. Spring goes and autumn comes, and the 4 seasons change. Only in this way can this forest continue to operate. The old man muttered something in a low voice. At the same time, a pair of bright eyes that shone in the dark night looked straight at the distant horizon in the northwest direction. After a short while, the old man's eyes slightly brightened, and the corners of his mouth curled into a smile in the dark night. He's here. He chuckled again. However, he did not know that it was completely dark in the sky, where no one could be seen. How could there be someone in the dark sky? 10 breaths later, a purple light suddenly flashed in the pitch-black sky. Although the light was not dazzling, it was enough to illuminate the entire area in the pitch-black night sky. Haha, Ying, you're finally here. Under the illumination of the purple light, the outline of the old man's face could be seen. The old man looked quite amiable. His old face was covered with wrinkles. These were the saber scars left behind by the passage of time. His beard, which should have been white, reflected a strange light under the purple light. This made the amiable-looking old man look even more sinister at this moment. Elder Hao Xian, there's been an accident. Sorry to keep you waiting. The purple light came closer and closer. When it was within 1,000 feet, the faint laughter of a middle-aged man could be heard. Patriarch, what happened? Could it be that the old bastard from the Sun family? No, I just didn't expect that Sun Shua would actually find a way to deal with my Do Chi, causing me to spend some effort. However, I was fortunate enough to see that guy suffer. Haha. The old man frowned. Before the solemn words from his mouth could be spat out, the figure that had already arrived in front of him waved his hand gently. As the laughter from his mouth sounded, he did not forget to shake the black-robed young man in his hand. This person was naturally Bai Ying, who had left Coldstream City in the evening. The person in his hand was Xiao Yan. Xiao Yan naturally had the ability to escape from the devil's hands. However, he was also curious as to why Bai Ying had repeatedly blocked Sun Shua for him. Hence, Xiao Yan had allowed Bai Ying to bring him here under the urging of his curiosity. However, knowing this, Xiao Yan suddenly felt an extremely dangerous aura in his heart. The source of this aura was the old man who had appeared in front of him and Bai Ying. This person's strength is definitely above Bai Ying's. Xiao Yan cried out in his heart. He involuntarily felt some regret in his heart. Unexpectedly, he had actually followed Bai Ying all the way and delivered himself to the lion's mouth. Moreover, from the way Bai Ying had addressed this old man, he seemed to be an elder. If he was an elder of the Sky Sword sect, would he not be in danger? Damn it! I have actually delivered myself to him. Xiao Yan viciously scolded himself in his heart. He felt helpless in his heart. From the looks of it, he could only place his final hope on Gu Yu.
Xiao Yan was unable to see through the strength of this old man in front of him, much less exchange blows with him.
The other party might really kill him with a single slap.
Of course, the two of them were naturally unaware of the thoughts in Xiao Yan's heart. However, even if they knew, it was likely that they would only laugh out loud.
This is Mr. Xiao Yan?
Hearing the ridicule in Bai Ying's words, the old man involuntarily turned his gaze to Xiao Yan, who had his eyes shut and head lowered. He frowned slightly and spoke in a somewhat courteous manner. Bai Ying was involuntarily startled when he saw that Xiao Yan did not react. His expression quickly changed as he hurriedly placed Xiao Yan in the air. His large hand extended from his sleeve and grabbed one of Xiao Yan's wrists. At the same time, a wave of spiritual strength swiftly surged out and entered Xiao Yan's body through his palm. At the same time, the old man's expression involuntarily became startled. He did not know what had happened and could only walk over with a curious expression. However, in the next moment, Bai Ying's originally frowning expression suddenly changed drastically. The spiritual strength that had entered Xiao Yan's body was swiftly withdrawn. The hand that was holding Xiao Yan's wrist also suddenly released. Bai Ying swiftly stood up and involuntarily took a couple of steps back. Only then did he look at Xiao Yan in front of him with a lingering fear. By the side, the old man's expression also changed slightly. The wrinkles on his old face appeared a little clearer at this moment.
What happened? Is there something wrong with this little fellow?
The old man's tone was indifferent as he asked. At the same time, his shriveled hand turned into a claw. A cluster of bright and glaring dough chi was about to spew out from his palm.
No. It is not that there is something wrong with him.
It is just that I have forgotten that Xiao Yan controls a heavenly flame.
Earlier, the heavenly flame was protecting its master. Due to my carelessness, I was startled by that thing.
However, it is now troublesome.
Xiao Yan cannot continue to be unconscious like this. We cannot wait that long.
If you and I continue to stay here, the other few clans and the Sky Sword sect will definitely become suspicious.
Then what should we do?
This little fellow has not woken up.
We can't even bring him back to the clan.
Don't tell me that we should really kill him and give him to the Sky Sword sect as a gift? The old man frowned. The expression on his old face appeared to be extremely unwilling.
Humph, even if we kill him, we will definitely not hand him over to them. Moreover, Xiao Yan's identity is special. We must not act rashly before we know his exact identity.
Bai Ying coldly snorted. He did not seem to care about this backer behind him. Hearing this, even the old man by the side nodded his head.
Then what should we do now? We cannot keep him, and we cannot kill him. It is difficult to have the best of both worlds.
The old man's expression appeared exceptionally gloomy under the purple light.
However, he did not know what to do. Hence, he could only look at Bai Ying once again.
Bai Ying also frowned when he saw this. Just as he was about to speak, the seemingly unconscious Xiao Yan in front of them suddenly began to cough intensely. Cough, 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 cough. When Xiao Yan opened his eyes, a bright light flashed in the depths of his eyes. On the other hand, Bai Ying and the old man looked at each other and could not help but laugh helplessly. Of all times, Xiao Yan had to wake up after they revealed their relationship with the Sky Sword sect.
Was this not obvious enough?
The unconscious Xiao Yan in front of them was clearly faking it.
Haha, Mr. Xiao Yan really woke up at the right time.
Otherwise, my clan's elders would have had to save him.
Bai Ying laughed.
At the same time, he let out a long sigh of relief in his heart. He slowly stood up from the void and stared at Xiao Yan.
Chapter 594.
Hearing the words from Bai Ying's mouth, Xiao Yan, who was illuminated by the purple light, could not help but frown slightly. Clearly, Xiao Yan was not interested in the latter's half-joking words. Under the purple light, the change in expression on Xiao Yan's face was also reflected in the eyes of the two people in front of him. In the dark night, Bai Ying and the old man beside him smiled at each other. Only then did they return their gazes to Xiao Yan's body.
Xiao Yan slowly stood up.
He could not help but gently shake his head. His dou qi was extremely weak, causing the current Xiao Yan to feel that his mind was unable to endure. There was a faint pain in the depths of his mind. This was caused by the attack of the strong wind while he was flying.
It had nothing to do with any injuries. However, it would likely take a few days for him to recover.
After calming himself down, Xiao Yan's face was calm in the dark night.
Under the purple light, no emotion could be seen on his face. This point involuntarily caused the two people standing in front of Xiao Yan to be slightly shocked. To be able to sort out his state of mind in the blink of an eye, such a person could not help but cause one's heart to be solemn. Haha, Mr. Xiao Yan is indeed extraordinary. This kind of mental strength is something that I cannot compare to. Bai Ying smiled and cupped his hands together towards Xiao Yan. He did not show any intention of underestimating Xiao Yan just because he was a half-emperor expert. Bai Ying did not doubt that if he dared to underestimate Xiao Yan in front of him, it was likely that he would have to pay a great price. With Sun Shuo as an example, he believed that this was enough. There is no need for clan leader Bai to be so polite. Since you have brought me to such a remote place, it is likely that it is not as simple as saving me. If there is anything, clan leader Bai can just say it. The expression on Xiao Yan's face did not change even a little because of the words from Bai Ying's mouth. Xiao Yan spoke faintly before crossing his hands over his chest and standing in the same spot. He was expressionless as he looked at Bai Ying without saying anything. Brat, you? The expression of the old man standing beside Bai Ying immediately became gloomy when he saw that Xiao Yan had actually revealed such a fearless manner. A cold snort was emitted from his nose as the dou qi within the old man's body began to circulate. Haoshuan. However, Bai Ying suddenly shouted. The old man's expression changed. He glanced at Bai Ying and found that Bai Ying was staring at him with a gloomy expression. Secretly curling his lips, he narrowed his eyes and stared at Xiao Yan. Once again, he let out a cold snort. Then, the old man resentfully withdrew his gaze. Since Mr. Xiao Yan doesn't like to beat around the bush, then I won't beat around the bush. Bai Ying had a smile on his face. He first cupped his hands towards Xiao Yan as an apology for the old man's actions. At the same time, he spoke with a soft smile. Seeing this, Xiao Yan did not comment. With a flick of his finger, 2 pills shot into his mouth. His throat rolled as he swallowed them. Xiao Yan ignored the 2 people in front of him as he sensed the faint warmth being emitted from his body. Instead, he slowly circulated the qi method in his body. The heavenly flame surged and began to refine the 2 medicinal pills in his body. Bai Ying could not help but secretly frown in response. However, he still maintained a warm smile on his face. Haha, no matter what, I have saved Mr. Xiao Yan. Don't tell me that Mr. doesn't even have a word of thanks? If not for you, perhaps I would have already taken the things I obtained and left Coldstream City instead of wasting my breath with you. Bai Ying nonchalantly said. However, Xiao Yan did not show any mercy. Xiao Yan really did not want to have anything to do with these people who had ulterior motives. People like these who like to use their brains often like to use others as tools. If Xiao Yan was not careful, he might really fall into their trap. Instead of preventing trouble, it was better to nip them in the bud. When he heard Xiao Yan's words, Bai Ying could not help but frown. He originally thought that if he mentioned the previous matter, Xiao Yan would at least give him some face. However, he did not expect Xiao Yan to be so rude. When the old man to the side heard this, he let out a cold snort. This time, Bai Ying was too lazy to stop him. Xiao Yan did not seem to be easy to get along with. Haha, Mr. Xiao Yan might have misunderstood. You should have heard it earlier. Our Bai clan does not have a good impression of the Heavenly Sword sect. It can even be said that there is a grudge between our Bai clan and the Heavenly Sword sect. Even with Bai Ying's character, a slight ripple involuntarily appeared in his tone when he spoke. From this, one could tell that Bai Ying seemed to have a great opinion of the Heavenly Sword sect. So, Xiao Yan was not interested in the relationship between the Bai clan and the Heavenly Sword sect. He only wanted to know why Bai Ying had brought him here. Of course, at this moment, Xiao Yan was able to roughly guess Bai Ying's intentions. Bai Ying glanced at the old man by the side when he spoke until this point. Their gazes met and the old man immediately understood Bai Ying's intention. Soon after, the old man waved his sleeve and a majestic dou qi immediately swept out. With the empty space where the 3 of them stood as the center, an enormous dou qi light barrier was formed within 100 feet radius of the 3 of them, surrounding them. Under the cover of this dou qi light barrier, any probing would be isolated. The voices within could not be heard by the outside world. Other than this dou qi light barrier had also trapped Xiao Yan's group within it. Unless the old man acted and took the initiative to remove this light barrier, it was impossible for Xiao Yan to charge out in his current condition. This move of the old man not only isolated any external forces, but also sealed off Xiao Yan's escape route. Bai Ying frowned slightly in the face of this, but he still chose to acquiesce. He was similarly worried. He had painstakingly brought Xiao Yan in front of him to this place. If Xiao Yan were to disappear from this place without even turning his head around, would that not mean that all his efforts would be for naught? Instead, he would end up offending the Sun Clan and create more trouble for himself. What do you mean by this? Xiao Yan narrowed his eyes. The expression in his eyes was slightly cold as he spoke in a deep voice. Mr. Xiao Yan need not mind. Our actions are for the sake of safety. After all, as I have said, there is also a grudge between our Bai clan and the Heavenly Sword Sect. However, the Heavenly Sword Sect is currently at its peak and the time is not right. Our Bai clan must also be careful when doing things. Bai Ying hurriedly cupped his hands to Xiao Yan after Xiao Yan's words sounded. His expression was quite solemn as he spoke. Seeing this, a dense white light flashed deep within Xiao Yan's eyes. After which, he coldly nodded and said, "Can you say it now? Why did you bring me here?" Hearing this, Bai Ying once again exchanged glances with the old man beside him. Immediately, he turned his gaze towards Xiao Yan. Bai Ying nodded slightly and said, "I brought Mr. Xiao Yan here today for no other reason. I only hope to discuss something with Mr. Xiao Yan." Xiao Yan lifted his eyebrows slightly. He turned his gaze and his right index finger gently leaped and flicked on his right shoulder. Immediately, he lifted his eyes slightly and the corner of his mouth was lifted into a smile. His tone was indifferent as he said, "Speak. I hope to invite Mr. Xiao Yan to join our Bai clan." Chapter 595. After doing all this, Xiao Yan slowly withdrew his gaze. His gaze swept over the entire sky. This time around, other than the few elite Dodi, the other people in the sky had very consciously landed in the city below. They did not wish to be targeted by Xiao Yan again. Even a 9-star half-D had been easily killed by Xiao Yan. They did not think that they were stronger than a 9-star half-D. At this very moment, it was likely that even if Xiao Yan was seriously injured, no one would dare to easily offend him. After all, that group of people from earlier had listened to Sun Shua's words and believed that Xiao Yan no longer had the ability to resist. Therefore, they had charged forward to kill Xiao Yan. However, it was likely that even Sun Shua himself had not expected such an outcome. In the sky, the battle between Bai Ying and Sun Shua had once again stopped because of Xiao Yan. At this moment, the two of them felt incomparably shocked in their hearts. Sun Shua had never imagined that Xiao Yan, who was originally an arrow at the end of its flight, would actually be able to display such a frightening strength at such a time. This was especially the case with the appearance of the Northern King, a 9-star half-D puppet. This kind of superfighter was enough to allow Xiao Yan to suppress anyone below the Dodi level. It would not be an exaggeration to say that Xiao Yan was currently invincible against anyone below the Dodi level. Even the back figure at this moment was also extremely shocked in his heart. Bai Ying involuntarily mocked himself in his heart as he recalled the scene of him rescuing Xiao Yan earlier. He had originally thought that if he had not intervened, Xiao Yan would have been surrounded and killed by that group of people. However, from the looks of it now, he had underestimated Xiao Yan too much. The true strength of the black-robed young man in front of him had already far surpassed that of a half-D level expert. It was likely that if Xiao Yan was at his peak condition, he might even be able to fight against an ordinary elite Dodi. Even with Bai Ying's character, he could not help but swallow a mouthful of saliva in his heart when he thought of this. Such a young elite Dodi. It was likely that even in the entire Yuanwu continent, such an existence was as rare as phoenix feathers and unicorn horns. Today, this child must either remain in my Sun Clan or be killed here. No matter what, he must not be allowed to leave Coldstream City alive. Sun Shua quietly spoke in his heart. His body, which was standing in the empty air, suddenly shook. Oil-yellow dough qi immediately surged wildly from the surface of his body. He waved his large hand and the enormous sword once again appeared in his hand. Sun Shua's body flashed and appeared in front of Xiao Yan in the blink of an eye. He swung his arm and the enormous sword immediately tore through the empty air and violently hacked at Xiao Yan's head. Xiao Yan's heart involuntarily felt slightly startled when he saw this. The expression on his face changed. The dou qi, which had just recovered in Xiao Yan's body, swiftly flowed along his qi paths and passed through his entire body. After which, Sun Shua's attack was about to land when Xiao Yan's body suddenly disappeared from the spot. Sun Shua's attack, which was filled with might, finally hacked into empty space where no one was present. What? This brat really has a frightening speed. Is this the strength of the sky extinction steps? If I am able to obtain this sky extinction steps, humph humph. Seeing Xiao Yan's frightening speed, Sun Shua's heart was initially startled. However, soon after, a different kind of thought emerged from the bottom of his heart. The corner of his mouth involuntarily revealed a smile that was filled with greed. The sky extinction steps was the main reason why the four great sects wanted to kill Xiao Yan. It was naturally not difficult to imagine how powerful it was. Moreover, the current Xiao Yan had allowed Sun Shua to personally witness the strangeness of the sky extinction steps. Faced with such a great treasure, it was naturally impossible for Sun Shua to not be tempted. When he thought of the various benefits that he would obtain after obtaining the sky extinction steps, Sun Shua's heart couldn't help but rapidly become fiery. The current Xiao Yan was only a 6-star half-martial emperor. After learning the sky extinction steps, he was actually able to explode with such frightening speed. If he, Sun Shua, were to obtain the sky extinction steps, as long as he diligently cultivated it, once he mastered it, wouldn't even the four great sect heads be able to do anything to him? At that time, his Sun family would naturally be able to become the 5th largest power in the Western region, excluding the four great sects. At that time, why would the Sun family need the Heavenly Sword sect's protection? Rather than existing under the eaves of others, it would be better to form their own sect. After all, didn't the Heavenly Sword sect often say that his Sun family had no ambitions? Since that was the case, his Sun family would do something that had ambitions. It would also let the Heavenly Sword sect know whether or not his Sun family had the so-called ambitions. Sun Shua coldly laughed in his heart. His body, which had just paused, once again charged forward explosively. His body was like a bolt of lightning as it swiftly charged toward Xiao Yan, who had appeared 1,000 feet away at this moment. Sun Shua's right hand, which was holding the hilt of the enormous sword, rotated slightly. The tip of the sword faced upward and tore apart the empty space on both sides with a force that could break bamboo. After reducing some of the resistance, Sun Shua's charging body also became a little faster. In the blink of an eye, he had once again arrived in front of Xiao Yan. Seeing this, the expression on Xiao Yan's face once again changed. Although he was confident that he could deal with any bandit below the Do-D class, it was completely impossible for Xiao Yan to deal with a true elite Do-D, especially a 3-star Do-D whose level was not low. On this point, forget about Xiao Yan's current condition. Even if he was at his peak condition, Xiao Yan similarly did not have the confidence to deal with him. The footsteps of his feet changed as he once again displayed the sky extinction steps. The instant Xiao Yan's body disappeared, the enormous sword also violently pierced toward him. Even though he had narrowly dodged this attack, that sharp force still managed to. It still left quite a deep wound on Xiao Yan's chest. The corner of Xiao Yan's mouth twitched slightly. He maneuvered the Do Qi within his body and removed the force that had entered his body through his wound. Soon after, Sun Shua's body once again attacked. The enormous sword broke through the air with an overbearing aura. The incomparably sharp aura still caused Xiao Yan's entire body to feel a chill despite being a great distance away. Damn it! Xiao Yan angrily cursed in his heart. He had no choice but to once again display the sky extinction steps and repeatedly dodge Sun Shua's attacks in the sky. Under the rapid exhaustion of the Do Qi within his body, Xiao Yan's body left behind numerous after images in the sky that were almost real. Sun Shua also carried a cold smile on his face as he followed closely behind Xiao Yan like a maggot in one's bones. Although Sun Shua was a little surprised at Xiao Yan's speed at the beginning, when this elite Do-D faced Xiao Yan with his true speed, the latter ultimately had difficulty contending with him. After all, with the current speed of Xiao Yan, even if he were to go all out, he would at the very most be comparable to Jin Yao. If he were to rely on this to contend with Sun Shua, who was a 3-star Do-D, then he would really be looking down on elite Do-D. Within a short moment, over a dozen wounds of various sizes had already appeared on Xiao Yan's body. On one hand, it was because Xiao Yan had borrowed the strength of his spiritual strength to swiftly dodge. On the other hand, it was also because Sun Shua had held back. However, at this moment, Sun Shua appeared to have caused enough trouble. The cold smile on his face gradually disappeared. With a twist of his wrist, the enormous sword in his hand was violently thrown out. The sharp edge of the sword was pointed directly at Xiao Yan. At the same time,
the frightening strength tore through the empty space and emitted a wave of ear-piercing explosive sound. At the same time, Sun Shua's body also instantly disappeared from the original spot. Heh. Xiao Yan, I have already given you a chance to escape earlier. However, you don't seem to cherish it. Now prepare to die. Seeing the enormous sword shooting over, Xiao Yan's expression had just changed slightly when Sun Shua's sharp laughter, which was filled with a dark viciousness, was transmitted over from the sky. Xiao Yan's expression was solemn. Surging spiritual strength completely spread out from between his brows without holding back. At the same time, he clenched his right hand and the heavy Shen ruler once again appeared in his hand. His arm shook and the little dou qi in his body was swiftly poured into the enormous ruler. With a puff sound, the beautiful heavenly flame also rose at this moment. At the same time, waves of dou qi were also poured into the already shattered black robe on the surface of Xiao Yan's body. With the pouring in of dou qi, the shattered black robe swiftly recovered at a speed visible to the naked eye. The originally dark black robe seemed to have become even deeper after the pouring in of dou qi, however. This scene involuntarily attracted the somewhat stunned gazes of the other people. Even at this moment, Xiao Yan was actually still concerned about his own posture. He actually used the little dou qi he had to repair this black robe. This kind of action was extremely foolish in the eyes of others. This point caused even Sun Shua to laugh coldly in his heart when he saw it. At this moment Bai Ying, who was standing outside the battleground of the two, could not help but frown slightly. After witnessing Xiao Yan's strangeness, he did not think that this seemingly foolish action of Xiao Yan's was really so useless.
7. Sky. Breaking. Ruler. A low cry was spat out one word at a time in Xiao Yan's heart. At the same time, the huge ruler in his hand was immediately swung. Ruler glow shot out one after another from the tip of the huge ruler. They soared with the wind and in the blink of an eye, they transformed into a shocking ruler glow that was nearly 1,000 feet long. Unfortunately, when Xiao Yan used all his strength to swing out the fourth ruler, the dou qi in his body was exhausted, resulting in a lack of momentum. This caused Xiao Yan's body to immediately soften. He swayed a couple of times before stabilizing himself in the air. The exhaustion of his dou qi caused Xiao Yan's expression to be pale white at this moment. His body, which he had forcefully supported, appeared to have gradually lost control. Helplessly, the burden that he had to forcefully use the 7-layered sky-breaking ruler at this moment was extremely shocking. However, it was likely that he would still be unable to escape from Sun Shu's demonic claws by relying on just this. After all, the 4-ruler Xiao Yan had swung out could only block Sun Shu's weapon. Even Xiao Yan was unable to find out where Sun Shua's body was at this moment. Bang! A rushing wind sound was transmitted from beside Xiao Yan's ear the moment the ruler glow and the huge sword violently collided. At the same time, a cold wind pounced over, causing Xiao Yan's eyes to suddenly shrink. Soon after, a large hand suddenly extended from the empty space without any forewarning. It violently grabbed at Xiao Yan's head. Xiao Yan die. A hoarse ridicule contained a dark viciousness. The person who had attacked was undoubtedly Sun Shua. If this attack landed, it was likely that even Xiao Yan would undoubtedly die. On the other side, Bai Ying, who had already mobilized the dou qi in his body, suddenly narrowed his eyes. His hands under his sleeves were suddenly clenched. He was just about to attack when the trace of doubt in his heart caused a slight hesitation to appear in his actions. Bai Ying's eyes stared intently at Xiao Yan. He seemed to have an inexplicable confidence in this black-robed young man. Perhaps, Xiao Yan did not need his help. Despite having such thoughts in his heart, Bai Ying still did not dare to be careless. While his eyes stared intently at Xiao Yan, the dou qi in his body was prepared to erupt at any moment. As long as he was willing, Bai Ying would still be able to rescue Xiao Yan before Sun Shua killed him. Although the price might be a little great, he believed that paying any price in order to achieve his goal was proportionate. However, the instant Sun Shua's attack landed on Xiao Yan, a dark black curtain suddenly agglomerated behind Xiao Yan. Xiao Yan's expression was cold. His ruler viciously swung at Sun Shua's face while his body also took the opportunity to fall backwards. Bang! With a bang, the expressions on everyone's faces once again froze. Xiao Yan's figure had already disappeared into the black curtain. Before he disappeared, the huge black ruler viciously smashed into Sun Shua's face. However,
It was only when Xiao Yan had completely disappeared in front of Sun Shua along with the huge ruler that Sun Shua's descending hand finally smashed into the empty space with a furious expression. Everyone in the area focused their attention and looked over. They saw that half of Sun Shua's face, which had been violently smashed by the heavy ruler, had turned purple-black at this moment. 2 streams of fresh blood flowed out from his nose and the corner of his mouth. At this moment, Sun Shua could be said to be in an extremely miserable state. Chapter 596. The wind blew continuously in the empty sky. The scorching sunlight gradually dimmed. The cloudless azure sky unknowingly turned dark. It was as if it was before dawn, but also as if it was close to dusk. The soundless whistling sound still clearly reverberated in the minds of everyone in Coldstream City. At this moment, everyone stared blankly at the pitch-black figure in the sky. Everyone's face revealed an expression of disbelief. The shock in their hearts caused this group of people to open their mouths wide, but they were unable to spit out a single word. Even if there were a few people who wanted to say something, the words that they had prepared were forcefully stuck in their throats. Their lips and teeth trembled for a while, but they were unable to spit out a single word. At this moment, even the faces of the few elite Dodi who were standing in the distant sky were similarly stunned. Even they did not expect that the black-robed young man in front of them would actually break their understanding of him once again. What was that fellow just now? What a strange strength. It is different from Do-Chi and spiritual strength. That thing, could it be? It is the strength of the Great Way. The few elite Do-Di stared intently at the black robe on Xiao Yan's body. Their eyes were filled with shock. It was hard to imagine that Xiao Yan, whose strength had clearly not reached the Do-Di level, could actually control the strength of the Great Way. This brat is indeed not an ordinary person. We must not become enemies with him. Tisk Tsk. He has already comprehended the strength of the Great Way when he is merely a half-emperor. This Xiao Yan's future is limitless. Humph. He has already comprehended the strength of the Great Way when he is only a half-emperor. He is even fearless when he is being captured by the 4 great sects. Even a ghost would not believe that there is no one behind him. After the shock, many exclamations that were filled with various meanings quickly followed. In short, the meaning behind the words of these few elite Do-Di was that they would not become enemies with Xiao Yan. Or perhaps, it could be said that they did not dare to become enemies with him. In the sky, Bai Ying narrowed his eyes as he stared closely at Xiao Yan. He was also extremely shocked. He had never thought that Xiao Yan had actually grasped the power of laws. Even though he did not know what the power of laws belonged to, the fact that Xiao Yan had comprehended the power of laws was enough to shock him. Xiao Yan, oh Xiao Yan, who exactly are you? First you have such a strange Dao skill, and now you have the great Dao energy. You are really a person that is filled with secrets. Fortunately, I am not interested in your secrets. Bai Ying muttered softly in his heart. His gaze suddenly turned and landed on Sun Shua's body. Bai Ying's mouth involuntarily emitted a cold mocking laugh when he saw half of Sun Shua's swollen face. He did not expect that this Sun Shua, whom even he had difficulty injuring, would actually be ruthlessly slapped in the face by Xiao Yan's hands. This time around he, Sun Shua, could truly be considered to have lost all his face. Humph! Hearing Bai Ying's cold laughter, a fury immediately rose in Sun Shua's heart. The expression on his face had just changed when a hissing sound was emitted from his mouth. This once again attracted a mocking laugh from Bai Ying. Bastard! Dang! As the fury in his heart writhed, Sun Shua forcefully endured the intense pain that was transmitted from his face. He spat out some words of hatred in an unclear manner. His body suddenly shook and a viscous liquid-like Do-Chi immediately surged out of his body. As the Do-Chi writhed, the surrounding empty space involuntarily fluctuated. Roar! Soon after, a vague low roar was emitted from Sun Shua's mouth. He waved his large hand and a suction force surged from his palm. On the ground, the enormous sword that had been blasted down because of the attack earlier seemed to have been attracted by something at this moment. The body of the sword that was inserted deep into the ground suddenly trembled intensely. With a bang sound, it charged out of the ground and returned to Sun Shua's hand in the blink of an eye. Just as he was about to move, however, the expression in Sun Shua's eyes suddenly froze in the next moment. Even his breathing involuntarily turned sluggish. A pair of sharp eyes immediately opened in fury. Other than shock, there was an increasingly turbulent fury in the depths of his eyes. At this moment, One could see that the originally sharp and straight edge of the enormous sword that had returned to his hand actually had a gap of 1 to 2 centimeters.
This sword of Sun Shua's was not refined from an ordinary material. An ordinary attack would not be able to cause even the slightest damage to it, much less leave behind such a large gap. This kind of gap was something that even Bai Ying, who was also a 3-star Do-D, might not be able to leave behind. In the earlier collision, Sun Shua was clearly aware that this enormous sword of his did not suffer any damage. At this moment, however, a gap had appeared on this sword. It was obvious that this gap was definitely left behind in the collision earlier. The appearance of the gap on the enormous sword caused the fury in Sun Shua's heart to explode. The Xiao Yan in front of him had truly reached the point where he must kill him. No matter what happened today, he would not allow Xiao Yan to leave this place alive.
Ah, dang.
A shocking furious cry was emitted from Sun Shua's mouth. This time around, Sun Shua completely suppressed the intense pain that was transmitted from his face.
He waved his large hand and his right hand held the hilt of the enormous sword in a reverse grip.
The wide, enormous sword rotated in his hand as Sun Shua's feet suddenly stepped on empty air. The empty space under his feet collapsed and Sun Shua had already disappeared from his original spot in an instant. At the same time, the expression on Xiao Yan's face suddenly changed.
He waved the enormous ruler in his hand and his body swiftly flew back.
However, Sun Shua's speed was even faster than Xiao Yan's. Just as Xiao Yan retreated explosively, Sun Shua's figure had already appeared in front of Xiao Yan. At the same time, the wide, enormous sword violently tore through the empty space. The sharp edge of the sword had already arrived in front of Xiao Yan's neck. It was only a few inches away from Xiao Yan's throat. Suddenly, Xiao Yan's originally pale face became even more ghastly at this moment. The hairs on his body stood on end and the heart in his chest was also violently beating.
He let out a low cry in his heart before he viciously waved the enormous ruler in his hand.
Clang!
When the heavy blade of the ruler streaked across the empty space, it brought with it a piercing sound of wind breaking.
Just as the enormous sword was about to slash Xiao Yan's throat, it was only barely able to force the blow back. However, even so, the invisible force had also left a shallow wound on Xiao Yan's neck. Feeling the slight pain from his throat, Xiao Yan's heart was suddenly alarmed. His body rapidly retreated backwards. However, Sun Shua, who was in front of him, was like a maggot attached to a bone as he chased closely behind.
Clang!
A frighteningly large force was transmitted over. The heavy Xian ruler in Xiao Yan's hand was forcefully deflected by the enormous sword. Killing intent surged in Sun Shua's eyes. He twisted his wrist and the enormous sword in his hand followed the momentum and pierced through the empty space. It once again ruthlessly pierced towards Xiao Yan's throat. In the face of this attack, Xiao Yan really had no way of dodging. In the next moment, before Xiao Yan could do anything, Bai Ying, who had been waiting by the side for a long time, finally made his move. With a sudden wave of his sleeve, Do Qi swept out. A long spear covered in lightning suddenly shot out. It was like a thunderbolt that arrived between Xiao Yan and Sun Shua in the blink of an eye. It forced back the enormous sword with one strike. After which, Bai Ying's body flashed and arrived in front of Xiao Yan. With his back facing Sun Shua, Bai Ying ignored the other party and directly looked at Xiao Yan in front of him. Without much hesitation, Bai Ying grabbed the collar at Xiao Yan's chest and swiftly flew out of Coldstream City. In the blink of an eye, they had already disappeared from the sight of everyone in the city. After which, Sun Shua ruthlessly smashed the long spear in front of him into pieces. It turned into a dense Do Qi that gradually dissipated. However, when he turned his gaze around, he was shocked to discover that Xiao Yan and Bai Ying had already disappeared before his eyes.
Bai Ying! Bai Ying! Bai Ying!
An earth-shaking roar resounded across the sky like thunder. In the distant empty space, Bai Ying could clearly hear Uncle Sun's roar. However, he merely laughed coldly. With one hand controlling Xiao Yan, his body moved and swiftly flew towards the south. He knew that the current him and Xiao Yan were still too close to Coldstream City. If Sun Shua had the intention to investigate, he would definitely be able to find their direction. Now, the only thing they could do was to leave this place in order to completely shake off the Sun Clan. Chapter 597. It was nighttime. There were a lot of dark clouds in the night, so much so that the moon hanging in the sky was covered by the dark clouds. There was not a single trace of light between heaven and earth, as if a pure black curtain had covered the entire world. A biting cold wind blew between the heavens and the earth.
In the pitch-black skies above the sea of trees, one could clearly hear the sound of waves crashing against the reefs. In the pitch-black night, coupled with this bone-chilling cold wind, anyone who stood here would probably be unable to help but shiver.
Look at the sky. It seems like there's going to be a storm.
In the sky above a certain forest, an old man whose appearance could not be seen clearly was standing at the top of a huge tree. A large wave of trees surged around him, but the strange thing was that the waves of trees would automatically disperse when they came within 100 feet of the old man. Upon closer inspection, even the huge tree under the old man's feet did not seem to be affected by the surrounding cold wind at all.
The huge tree did not move at all, and its entire body was like a statue.
If it was not for the life aura it emitted, no one would believe that this tree would not move at all under the biting cold wind. Of course, rather than saying that the tree did not move, it would be more accurate to say that the old man whose appearance could not be seen clearly was not moving at all between heaven and earth.
That's good as well. This world has been peaceful for too long.
Those withered trees that should have fallen long ago should indeed fall.
Spring goes and autumn comes, and the 4 seasons change. Only in this way can this forest continue to operate.
The old man muttered something in a low voice. At the same time, a pair of bright eyes that shone in the dark night looked straight at the distant horizon in the northwest direction. After a short while, the old man's eyes slightly brightened, and the corners of his mouth curled into a smile in the dark night.
He's here.
He chuckled again, but he did not know that it was a pitch-black sky where no one could be seen.
How could there be anyone in the sky?
After 10 breaths, a purple light suddenly flashed in the pitch-black sky. Although the light was not dazzling, it was enough to illuminate the entire area in the pitch-black sky.
Haha, Ing, you're finally here.
Under the illumination of the purple light, the outline of the old man's face could be seen.
The old man looked quite amiable. His old face was covered with wrinkles. These were the saber scars left behind by the passage of time. His beard, which should have been white, reflected a strange light under the purple light.
This made the amiable-looking old man look even more sinister at this moment.
Elder Hao Xian, there's been an accident. Sorry to keep you waiting. The purple light came closer and closer.
When it was within 1,000 feet, the faint laughter of a middle-aged man could be heard.
Patriarch, what happened? Could it be that the old bastard from the Sun family?
No, I just didn't expect that Sun Shua would actually find a way to deal with my Do Qi, causing me to spend some effort. However, I was fortunate enough to see that guy suffer. Haha.
The old man frowned.
Before the solemn words from his mouth could be spat out, the figure that had already arrived in front of him waved his hand gently. As the laughter sounded from his mouth, he did not forget to shake the black-robed young man in his hand.
This person was naturally Bai Ying, who had left Coldstream City in the evening. The person in his hand was Xiao Yan. Xiao Yan naturally had the ability to escape from the devil's hands. However, he was also curious as to why Bai Ying had repeatedly blocked Sun Shua for him. Hence, Xiao Yan had allowed Bai Ying to bring him here. However, knowing this, Xiao Yan suddenly felt an extremely dangerous aura in his heart.
The source of this aura was the old man who had appeared in front of him and Bai Ying.
This person's strength is definitely above Bai Ying's. Xiao Yan cried out in his heart.
He involuntarily felt some regret in his heart. Unexpectedly, he had followed Bai Ying all the way and delivered himself to the lion's mouth. Moreover, from the way Bai Ying had addressed this old man, he seemed to be an elder. If he was an elder of the Sky Sword sect, would he not be in danger?
Damn it! I have actually delivered myself into his hands.
Xiao Yan viciously scolded himself in his heart. He immediately felt helpless in his heart.
From the looks of it, he could only place his final hope on Gu Yu.
Xiao Yan was unable to see through the strength of this old man in front of him, much less exchange blows with him.
The other party might really kill him with a single slap.
Of course, the two of them were naturally unaware of the thoughts in Xiao Yan's heart. However, even if they knew, it was likely that they would only laugh out loud.
This is Mr. Xiao Yan?
Hearing the ridicule in Bai Ying's words, the old man involuntarily turned his gaze to Xiao Yan, who had his eyes shut and head lowered. He frowned slightly and spoke in a somewhat courteous manner. Bai Ying was involuntarily startled when he saw that Xiao Yan did not react. His expression quickly changed as he hurriedly placed Xiao Yan in the air. His large hand extended from his sleeve and grabbed one of Xiao Yan's wrists. At the same time, a wave of spiritual strength swiftly surged out and entered Xiao Yan's body through his palm. At the same time, the old man's expression involuntarily became startled. He did not know what had happened and could only walk over with a curious expression. However, in the next moment, Bai Ying's originally frowning expression suddenly changed drastically. The spiritual strength that had entered Xiao Yan's body was swiftly withdrawn. The hand that was holding Xiao Yan's wrist also suddenly released. Bai Ying swiftly stood up and involuntarily took a couple of steps back. Only then did he look at Xiao Yan in front of him with some lingering fear. By the side, the old man's expression also changed slightly. The wrinkles on his old face appeared a little clearer at this moment. What happened? Is there something wrong with this little fellow? The old man's tone was indifferent as he asked. At the same time, his shriveled hand turned into a claw. A cluster of bright and glaring dough chi was about to spew out from his palm. No. It is not that there is something wrong with him. It is just that I have forgotten that Xiao Yan controls a heavenly flame. Earlier, the heavenly flame was protecting its master. Due to my carelessness, I was shocked by that thing. However, it is now troublesome. Xiao Yan cannot continue to be unconscious like this. We cannot wait that long. If you and I continue to stay here, the other few clans and the Sky Sword sect will definitely become suspicious. Then what should we do? This little fellow has not woken up. We can't even bring him back to the clan. Don't tell me that we should really kill him and give him to the Sky Sword sect as a gift? The old man frowned. The expression on his old face appeared to be extremely unwilling. Humph, even if we kill him, we will definitely not hand him over to them. Moreover, Xiao Yan's identity is special. We must not act rashly before we know his exact identity. Bai Ying coldly snorted. He did not seem to care about this backer behind him. Hearing this, even the old man by the side nodded his head. Then what should we do now? We cannot keep him, and we cannot kill him. It is difficult to have the best of both worlds. The old man's expression appeared exceptionally gloomy under the purple light. However, he did not know what to do. Hence, he could only once again look at Bai Ying. Bai Ying also frowned when he saw this. Just as he was about to speak, the seemingly unconscious Xiao Yan in front of them suddenly began to cough intensely. Cough, 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 cough. When Xiao Yan opened his eyes, a bright light flashed in the depths of his eyes. On the other hand, Bai Ying and the old man looked at each other and could not help but laugh helplessly. Of all times, Xiao Yan had to wake up after they revealed their relationship with the Sky Sword sect. Was this not obvious enough? The unconscious Xiao Yan in front of them was clearly faking it. Haha, Mr. Xiao Yan really woke up at the right time. Otherwise, my clan's elders would not have been able to hold back and save him. Bai Ying laughed out loud. At the same time, he sighed in relief within his heart. He slowly stood up from the empty air. Both of his eyes looked at Xiao Yan as he spoke with an unknown meaning in his mouth. Chapter 598. Xiao Yan stayed in the Golden Mountain City for several days. During this period of time, other than resting, he did not forget to search for the remaining 2 medicinal ingredients. Currently, he had already gathered all of the medicinal ingredients required to concoct the Bodhi returning pellet. However, he still lacked the 2 medicinal ingredients required to concoct the Ice Spirit pellet. However, to Xiao Yan's surprise, he did not manage to find what he needed in the Golden Mountain City. In the end, he sighed and left the Golden Mountain City. This time around, Xiao Yan went straight for his target. He continued to travel southward. On the way, he passed through many cities. Only after 10 days did he gradually slow down his speed. Traveling was also a kind of cultivation method. Xiao Yan's continuous traveling for 10 days had perfectly demonstrated this point. After 10 days of non-stop cultivation, the dou qi in Xiao Yan's body had reached a saturation point. At this saturation point, even if he were to refine it with a heavenly flame, it would not be able to compress it in the slightest. This was also the sign that Xiao Yan's strength was about to break through to the middle stage of the 6-star half-martial emperor realm. Only at this moment did Xiao Yan, who was traveling, stop. He descended on top of a mountain peak. Without any hesitation, he sat down cross-legged on top of the mountain peak. Hoo-hoo! After taking a deep breath, Xiao Yan inspected his body with his consciousness. Sure enough, the dou qi in the vortex space was completely filled. At this time, if Xiao Yan were to make a breakthrough and increase his strength to the middle stage of the 6-star half-martial emperor realm, it would simply be a matter of course. Naturally, Xiao Yan would not let go of this opportunity so easily. He smiled in his heart and immediately withdrew his consciousness. The instant he opened his eyes, he flicked his finger. A black light immediately shot out and turned into the Northern King before Xiao Yan. During this period of time, Xiao Yan needed peace and quiet the most. If he was disturbed at this time, his breakthrough might end in failure. This was not something Xiao Yan wanted to see. After summoning the Northern King, Xiao Yan could not help but frown slightly. He still did not feel at ease. His eyes shifted slightly and a sharp glint flashed across his eyes. With a wave of his sleeve, 3 streaks of light shot out and were placed in the air by Xiao Yan in 3 different directions. The 3 streaks of light were 3 different array discs. The 3 formation discs were all rank 2 defensive formation discs. The energy emitted from them was sufficient to withstand an all-out attack from a 9-star half-martial emperor. When all 3 formation discs were unleashed, no one below the Do D level would be able to break through them. After doing all this, Xiao Yan calmed down slightly. With a flick of his finger, 3 streaks of Do Qi shot out and instantly entered the 3 formation discs. With the infusion of Do Qi, the 3 formation discs immediately emitted a dazzling golden light. As the light spread, it turned into 3 dense Do Qi light barriers that protected Xiao Yan within them. Soon after, Xiao Yan withdrew his consciousness and slowly closed his eyes. The breathing in his nose gradually became stable and orderly. 2 hours later, when the aura within Xiao Yan's body had completely recovered to its peak, with a thought, the flame mantra in his body began to circulate. At this moment, the enormous amount of Do Qi within the vortex space started to surge. Streaks of Do Qi surged out from the vortex space. Soon after, they separated like a river and turned into several smaller streaks of Do Qi. Following the circulation of the flame mantra Qi, they flowed into the meridians. At the same time, in the outside world, the instant that the flame mantra Qi method in Xiao Yan's body began to circulate, the empty space around Xiao Yan's body began to fluctuate violently. Streaks of hot energy that were filled with a wild and violent intent also appeared to be attracted at this moment and swiftly agglomerated from the empty space. They were like numerous bright red fire snakes that coiled around Xiao Yan's body a couple of times. After which, following Xiao Yan's breathing, they gradually merged into Xiao Yan's body. When these mottled energies entered Xiao Yan's body, the beautiful heavenly flame immediately pounced on them like a hungry wolf that had seen a wild rabbit. Before the mottled Do Qi could resist, it had already been refined into threads of pure Do Qi in the blink of an eye. After passing through the refinement of the heavenly flame, they flowed into the Qi paths in Xiao Yan's body. Following the Do Qi in the Qi paths, they were refined by the flame mantra Qi method before finally flowing into the vortex space through the route of the flame mantra Qi method. Under this repeated refinement, Xiao Yan's aura gradually grew at an extremely slow speed. While Xiao Yan was slowly training, time swiftly flowed by like sand between one's fingers. In the blink of an eye, 1 month had already passed. Currently, there were only 2 months left until the opening of the desolate ancient remains. As time flowed by, changes gradually occurred within Xiao Yan's body. Every time he advanced, there would be a small change within his body. The direct manifestation of this change was that every aspect within Xiao Yan's body would receive a different degree of improvement. Regardless of whether it was his Qi paths, his bones, the strength of his physical body, the density of his Do Qi, or the changes within the vortex space, every aspect was becoming stronger and stronger. Following the change in the aura within Xiao Yan's body, the spatial fluctuations within the empty space around him became increasingly intense. Circular ripples that were like water waves continuously surged outwards until finally, it completely returned to calmness. This kind of calmness was not the kind that one could see with one's naked eyes. Instead, it was a kind of vibration that was difficult to detect under the extremely intense fluctuations. At the same time, crimson-red Do Qi continuously surged out from the empty space between the heavens and the earth. The crimson-red energy was like a substance as it fiercely burned around Xiao Yan's body. Xiao Yan was like a phoenix within the fire. Once he broke through, it would be the time for the phoenix to be reborn. Under the continuous swallowing and refining of the flame mantra Qi method within Xiao Yan's body, this long period of refinement continued for close to 10 days. It was only at noon on the 9th day that Xiao Yan suddenly opened his eyes under the afterglow of the scorching sun. As the last thread of Do Qi in his body entered the vortex, The aura of Xiao Yan's entire body immediately soared to a new level. An instant later, the aura within Xiao Yan's body that was about to leak out was completely withdrawn back into his body in a short instant. Not even the slightest bit leaked out. After a couple of breaths, Xiao Yan finally forcefully endured the abundant dou qi within his body. His body trembled slightly as he violently inhaled a breath of air. Immediately following this, Xiao Yan abruptly raised his head. The expression on his face swiftly became fanatical. He widened his mouth and emitted a long roar that shook the heavens and the earth. Ha! After the long roar was emitted, Xiao Yan's body suddenly shook. His feet ferociously stomped on the peak of the cliff below him. In an instant, an enormous force poured out and caused the cliff to collapse. As for Xiao Yan's body, he borrowed the force and like a bolt of lightning, instantly broke through the clouds and stepped onto the 9 heavens. After close to a month and a half of unceasing training, Xiao Yan's strength had finally obtained another breakthrough. He had successfully entered the middle stage of the 6-star half-martial emperor realm. Chapter 599. I hope that with my status as the head of the Bai clan, I can sincerely invite Mr. Xiao Yan to join our Bai clan. Bai Ying bowed respectfully to Xiao Yan while his voice was emitted. From the looks of it, he was extremely sincere. Seeing this scene, not only Xiao Yan, but even the old man beside him also revealed a surprised expression. He did not expect that the clan head of his clan would show such a respectful attitude to this young man in front of him. At this moment, even this old man who did not doubt Bai Ying's words, was similarly unable to understand in his heart. Even if he wanted to invite Xiao Yan to join their Bai clan, there was no need for him to be so respectful. It should be known that an elite Dou Di was actually showing such respect to a mere 6-star bandit. This kind of action was really unimaginable. In everyone's eyes, an elite Dou Di was considered an expert who had truly climbed to the top of the pyramid on the origin martial continent. An expert of this level was not something that any of the so-called experts below could compare with. Even an elite bandit was ultimately unable to withstand a single blow in front of an elite Dou Di. It had always been an elite bandit who bowed to an elite Dou Di. No one had ever seen an elite Dou Di bow to an elite bandit. The scene in front of them was an insult to an elite Dou Di. After all, when had anyone in the entire origin martial continent ever seen an elite Dou Di bow to a mere bandit? However, only Bai Ying was clearly aware of just how frightening this black-robed young man in front of him was in his heart. That's right. In terms of cultivation level, Xiao Yan was indeed only an elite bandit. However, in Bai Ying's eyes, a bandit was merely a layer of outer clothing on Xiao Yan's body. Under this outer clothing was something that no one could see clearly. This was the true terror of Xiao Yan. It was estimated that Xiao Yan's full strength was likely not inferior to an ordinary initial class Dou Di if he were to use all of his strength. Moreover, it was this person whose true strength was so frightening that his age was much younger than any ordinary elite Dou Di. Even though this was the case, Bai Ying did not forget that he had already heard Bai Yi mention to him earlier that Xiao Yan in front of him was a rank 3 alchemist on top of possessing a frightening strength. Great strength and frightening alchemy skills. Bai Ying believed that Xiao Yan in front of him already possessed the qualification for him to lower his attitude. He did this not only to rope in Xiao Yan, but also to think of the clan behind him. Ying. In the dark night the old man frowned. Just as the word left his mouth, an earth-shattering rumble of thunder suddenly resounded between heaven and earth. Rumble! Xiao Yan raised his head. His eyes looked at the dark sky above his head. Lightning flashed and thunder roared. The silver lightning was like a serpent as it shot out from the black fog that covered the entire world. In merely an instant, it had similarly illuminated the entire world. In an instant, the entire world appeared to have returned from night to day. A glaring white light scattered across the sky above the vast mountain forest. The old man who was staring at Xiao Yan from above the mountain forest saw an extremely young face the moment the white light scattered down. This brat, he quietly muttered in his heart. It was not that he had never seen such a young bandit before. However, all of those young bandits were members of large factions. He had never seen someone like Xiao Yan, who was all alone. At this moment, the old man seemed to have understood a little in his heart. However, he still held some doubt in his heart. Even so, Xiao Yan in front of him should not have caused Bai Ying to display such an attitude. Even if Xiao Yan's training talent far exceeded his peers, he had after all missed the best training period. Even if the current him were to join the Bai clan, it would still be incomparably difficult for him to achieve anything in his training. Just as the old man looked at Bai Ying again, filled with doubt, the latter also quickly glanced at him. The meaning in his eyes seemed to be advising the old man not to say anything. At this moment, the old man finally helplessly nodded. At the same time, his eyes became even more uncertain as he stared at Xiao Yan. He believed that since Xiao Yan in front of him was able to cause Bai Ying to treat him in such a respectful manner, there was definitely something extraordinary about him. It was likely that he could only get Bai Ying to tell him about this after the matter at hand was over. Seeing Bai Ying's respectful attitude, Xiao Yan could not help but raise his eyebrows. While he was surprised, he had not expected Bai Ying to actually invite him to join his clan. There is no need for clan leader Bai to waste so much effort. I will definitely not join any faction. As the saying went, one does not slap a smiling face. Moreover, Bai Ying had shown him such an attitude, so Xiao Yan's tone naturally became a little gentler. Bai Ying's expression was slightly stunned when he heard Xiao Yan's words. However, he nodded as though he had already expected it. He naturally knew that the latter would not easily agree to such a hasty invitation. Moreover, until now, he, Bai Ying, did not have any evidence to prove that the Bai clan behind him was secretly opposing the Heavenly Sword sect. Therefore, it was even more impossible for Xiao Yan to casually agree to join his Bai clan. Mr. Xiao Yan is indeed as I expected. He will not easily join the Bai clan. Bai Ying slowly stood up and inhaled a deep breath of air. A regretful expression involuntarily appeared on his face. At the same time, the expression of the old man by the side also became stern. The dou qi in his body began to circulate. His long robe fluttered without any wind as an invisible pressure swept out from his body. Haoshuan, why are you so rash? Bai Ying once again opened his mouth and stopped the old man by the side. The latter was helpless. He could only bitterly withdraw the pressure that he was about to unleash. Xiao Yan quietly sighed in relief in his heart when he saw this. His tightly clenched hand slowly relaxed. A wisp of dense white flame glow was quietly hidden deep within his eyes. If this old man had really attacked earlier, Xiao Yan would have had to rely on Gu Yu's strength to kill these two people. Fortunately, Bai Ying's actions had unintentionally saved them from a life-and-death disaster. Mr. Xiao Yan, I hope that Mr. Xiao Yan will not hurriedly reject my invitation. Perhaps in the future, Mr. will change your mind. Of course, if Mr. Xiao Yan is really unwilling, I will naturally not force you. However, I still hope that today's matter. Bai Ying's tone became a little heavier towards the end of his words. Xiao Yan was unconcerned, but he still nodded his head to express his understanding. Bai Ying laughed out loud upon seeing this and continued. If we are unable to become family, I, Bai Ying, hope that we can become friends in the end. After all, the Sky Sword sect is one of the 4 great sections. They are not only your enemy, but also my Bai clan's enemy. Mr. Xiao Yan need not doubt this point. Xiao Yan nodded. His heart moved slightly. If what Bai Ying said was true, it might not be a bad thing for him. After all, it was better to have one more friend than one more enemy. Chapter 600. After chatting with Bai Ying and the old man for a while longer, Xiao Yan took advantage of the darkness and left the mountain forest. Lightning flashed and thunder rumbled in the night sky. Violent winds and torrential rain sounded like the roars of beasts. Dazzling white light illuminated the mountain forest below. The light was so dazzling that it caused one to have no choice but to squint and open one's eyes wide at times. Bai Ying and the old man were still in the sky above the mountain forest. At this moment, the two of them had their hands behind their backs. Under the illumination of the lightning, the expressions on their faces were faintly discernible. Clan leader, this kid is really not simple. The old man stared at the direction Xiao Yan had left in. It was as if he could see the latter rapidly flying through the void. The instant the pouring rain touched the black robe on Xiao Yan's body, it seemed as if the rain had entered the endless void and disappeared without a trace. During the conversation with Xiao Yan earlier, although both parties were carefully probing each other's foundation with every sentence, Xiao Yan did not reveal the slightest flaw from the beginning until the end. Each of his words and actions caused them to quietly frown repeatedly in their hearts. It was as though the Xiao Yan in front of them was not a young man. Instead, he was like an experienced person who had lived for an unknown number of years. It was likely that it would be extremely difficult to obtain any other information from his mouth. Haha, if he had truly revealed a flaw,
It would instead cause me to look down on him. However, Xiao Yan is indeed extremely astonishing. This is not only because of his thoughts, it is also because of his strength. When he finished speaking, Bai Ying's face involuntarily revealed a solemn expression. Xiao Yan was indeed the person who had shocked him the most among all the geniuses he had seen. Haha, clan head. There is no need for you to belittle yourself. This Xiao Yan is indeed extraordinary. However, no matter how one puts it, he is only a 6-star half-martial emperor. Although our young master has borrowed the aid of medicinal pills, isn't his strength real? No, Haoshuan, I've already said that Xiao Yan is indeed extremely astonishing. The reason why I think so highly of him is not because he is a 6-star half-martial emperor. Of course, if his strength was only that of a 6-star half-martial emperor, I would naturally not think so highly of him. After the old man spoke, Bai Ying closed his eyes and shook his head. He let out a soft sigh before opening his eyes again. His gaze turned and stared at the old man beside him. The old man was slightly startled when he saw this, but before he could speak, Bai Ying continued. Have you seen a 6-star half-martial emperor suppress several hundred half-martial emperors at the same time? As soon as Bai Ying spoke, the old man's face suddenly froze. Shock instantly surged into his deep eyes. Bai Ying inhaled a deep breath of air. Each time he recalled the scene that had occurred in Coldstream City during the day, Bai Ying's heart would be involuntarily shocked. He had never imagined that a half-martial emperor would be able to unleash such a frightening strength. However, this was not the end. Bai Ying slowly exhaled the turbid air in his chest. After which, he opened his mouth once again. Have you seen a half-martial emperor being able to slap the face of a 3-star Do-D until it swells? Ugh, this. The expression on the old man's face immediately became extremely shocked when he heard these words. If it was the former, he could barely accept it. However, the latter was too shocking. A bandit was actually able to slap the face of an elite Do-D until it was swollen. If news of this matter were to spread, would it not become a laughingstock? However, could it be that this kind of thing had happened in? The expression in the old man's eyes gradually became shocked when he thought until this point. He had never imagined that such a shocking thing would actually be accomplished by that inconspicuous little fellow from earlier. Clan leader, what do you mean? That's right. I have personally witnessed everything that Xiao Yan has done. Not only did he beat up all the half-martial emperors in Coldstream City, but that kind of absolute suppression is not something that a half-martial emperor can achieve. After all, based on the situation back then, there were over a dozen 9-star half-martial emperors among those people. Moreover, there were hundreds of half-martial emperors. In the face of such a lineup, even an ordinary Do-D would have to be wary. However, Xiao Yan has forcefully suppressed them, completely suppressed them. That group of people did not even have the slightest ability to retaliate in front of Xiao Yan. I even find it hard to believe that those people were all half-martial emperors. Who? Bai Ying's expression was extremely grave as he spoke. The old man beside him seemed to empathize with him. His breathing had unknowingly become hurried as he listened to Bai Ying's words. As for the Do-D that I mentioned, haha, it is Sun Shua. Even I would find it difficult to deal with that fellow. However, I never expected that he would be ruthlessly slapped in the face by Xiao Yan today. Moreover, it was in a situation where his Do-Chi was completely exhausted. Bai Ying laughed. However, his tone gradually became solemn towards the end. At the same time, he also swallowed the matter of Xiao Yan controlling the great Tao energy into his stomach. Gulp! Under the cover of the rumbling thunder, the old man could not help but secretly swallow his saliva. The shock in his heart was even more difficult to describe with words. When the lightning cut across the sky and released a dazzling white light, one could see that the old man's face was actually paler than Bai Ying's under the illumination of the lightning. This kind of paleness was not because he was weak in any way. It was merely because of the shock in the old man's heart at this moment. At the same time, in the empty space thousands of miles away, Xiao Yan slowly came to a stop after leaving the range of the mountain range. His gaze turned back and looked. Behind him was also pitch black. Who? Letting out a deep breath, Xiao Yan's tensed body suddenly relaxed at this moment. Immediately, a giddy feeling swiftly surged from the depths of his mind, causing Xiao Yan's eyelids to become increasingly heavy. At the same time, the great Tao energy that was applied to the surface of the black robe had lost the support of the Do-Chi and quietly disappeared at this moment. As the great Tao energy disappeared,
The pouring rain immediately mercilessly struck Xiao Yan's body. An instant of coldness caused Xiao Yan to suddenly recover his senses. He violently clenched his teeth. Only then did his body move and swiftly move. He randomly chose a direction and flew towards the mountain range below. On the other side, Bai Ying and the old man also quietly conversed for a while before moving separately. They flew in two different directions. Chapter 601. In the blink of an eye, a week had already passed. At this moment, Xiao Yan had already rested for a week. The aura within his body had also rapidly recovered to its peak. After leaving the mountain range, Xiao Yan headed south. This was because, according to what Sun Hua had said back at Coldstream City, the so-called desolate ancient remains was located at the border between the Shilin mountain range and the human territory. The soul-gathering fruit that Xiao Yan needed was located there. After continuously traveling for a few days, Xiao Yan finally arrived before a city on the 6th day. Sun Hua did not discuss the so-called desolate ancient remains with Xiao Yan in detail. Therefore, Xiao Yan knew nothing about it. Thus, Xiao Yan could only place his hopes on some of the nearby cities. Perhaps he would be able to inquire about some information regarding the desolate ancient remains here. Golden Mountain City. Xiao Yan softly muttered. Wearing a black robe, he followed the flow of people around him and squeezed into the city. Golden Mountain City could not be considered a large city. Thus, compared to other places, this Golden Mountain City appeared somewhat empty. One could practically see the edges of this small city with a single glance. Of course, if one wanted to walk, it would likely take a couple of hours to cross this city. The buildings within this city were indeed much simpler than other cities. Even the experts within this city could not be compared to other cities. From Xiao Yan's spiritual perception, the strongest person within this Golden Mountain City was only an advanced 9-star half-martial emperor. The weakest was only a Do Zun. However, by the same logic compared to other places, this place appeared to be much more peaceful. At the very least, Xiao Yan did not see many troublemakers along the way. However, even though this was the case, it did not disturb Xiao Yan's current mood. On the contrary, the fragrance in the air and the cool breeze that came from the front caused Xiao Yan's body and mind to feel a wave of relaxation and satisfaction. Of course, although a sparrow was small, it still had all its vital organs. The city was small, but it didn't hide its prosperity. Even though it wasn't comparable to other cities, Xiao Yan still found the information he wanted. After making some inquiries, Xiao Yan's heart involuntarily did not know whether to laugh or cry. He had searched all over the place to gather information, yet it appeared as though everyone knew about him when he arrived at this place. Each time he asked a passerby about the desolate ancient remains, the passerby would use a strange expression to look at Xiao Yan. That expression caused Xiao Yan's entire body to feel uncomfortable. After a couple of inquiries, Xiao Yan ended up being completely rebuffed. Although those passersby were aware in their hearts, they did not appear to want to tell Xiao Yan the so-called secret that they knew without any benefit. It was so much so that for the sake of obtaining benefits, several half-martial emperors surrounded Xiao Yan in the middle of the road. Every single one of them had a hungry wolf-like expression on their faces, and the smiles on their faces appeared incomparably sinister. Finally, after Xiao Yan unleashed the aura of his strength, the few passers-by, who were merely 1-star bandits, hurriedly changed their attitude toward Xiao Yan with frightened faces. The expressions on their faces swiftly changed and turned into seductive ones. It was as though the matter from a moment ago had never happened. At this moment, Xiao Yan involuntarily laughed coldly in his heart. These people were a group of people who used their strength to bully the weak. They were arrogant at first, then respectful. Just thinking about it made one laugh. When they saw Xiao Yan's young appearance for the first time, the few half-martial emperors did not think much of it in their hearts. In their hearts, they naturally treated him as an ordinary young man. These experts who boasted of their great strength would naturally not mind suppressing such a person. Unfortunately, after witnessing Xiao Yan's true strength, this group of people finally understood just how frightening the strength of this young black-robed man in front of them was. After the few half-martial emperors carefully described it, Xiao Yan finally had a general understanding of the so-called desolate ancient ruins in his heart. The desolate ancient ruins seemed to have been left behind by an elite Do Di. As for the identity of that elite Do Di, it was already impossible to find out until now. However, from what everyone knew, that elite Do Di seemed to be an expert with an extremely powerful spiritual strength. As for whether he was an alchemist or a formation master, this was something that no one knew.
According to their understanding, the tomb contained all sorts of treasures. There was a large number of high-tier medicinal pills, countless natural treasures, do-chi methods, medicinal cauldrons for refining pills, high-tier formation plates. These things that were extremely difficult to find in the outside world could be found everywhere in that tomb. Moreover, according to what the few half-martial emperors had said, there was a Ling-class Do skill in the tomb of that elite Do D. Even an elite Do D would be moved by a Do skill of that class. Among all these treasures, the one that Xiao Yan was most concerned about was naturally the soul-gathering fruit. According to the description of the few half-martial emperors in front of him, the thing with the highest value in the tomb of that elite Do D was the soul-gathering fruit that Xiao Yan needed. Moreover, due to the attraction of this soul-gathering fruit, it seemed that the 4 great clans under the Heavenly Sword sect were coveting it. When the tomb opened, the 4 great clans would definitely not miss this opportunity. After hearing this point, Xiao Yan's heart could not help but become solemn. Although he had already secretly come to an agreement with the Bai clan, this was ultimately still an uncertain factor. Before he was certain, even Xiao Yan could not guarantee that the Bai clan would not attack him for the benefit of the various clans. In this way, Xiao Yan would be in trouble. Currently, he could only hope that when the 4 great clans were in chaos, he would be able to quietly take advantage of them. Of course, in that kind of situation, the 4 great clans would definitely dispatch elite Do D. As for whether he would have the opportunity to obtain the soul-gathering fruit, it was unknown at this moment. However, it was fortunate that there were still 3 months before the opening of the desolate ancient ruins. These 3 months were sufficient for Xiao Yan to make some preparations. Perhaps, Xiao Yan might be able to think of a good plan during this period of time. As for the matter of the ruins, he could only temporarily put it aside because, after experiencing a couple of intense battles, the current Xiao Yan could already feel that his strength could increase by another step. His initial stage 6-star half-martial emperor strength had already reached its saturation point. He hoped that he could use the next 3 months to raise his initial stage 6-star half-martial emperor strength to the middle stage 6-star half-martial emperor strength. Although the gap between them did not appear to be large, if they were to truly be placed on the battlefield, the effect that they would display would not be just a little bit. Regarding this point, although the gap between half-martial emperors was very small and not easy to see, if it were to be placed among Do D experts, the difference in strength could be said to be a difference of 1,000 miles. Chapter 602. Xiao Yan stayed in the Golden Mountain City for several days. During this period of time, other than resting, he did not forget to search for the remaining 2 medicinal ingredients. Currently, he had already gathered all of the medicinal ingredients required to concoct the Bodhi-returning pellet. However, he still lacked the 2 medicinal ingredients required to concoct the Ice Spirit pellet. However, to Xiao Yan's surprise, he did not manage to find what he needed in the Golden Mountain City. In the end, he sighed and left the Golden Mountain City. This time around, Xiao Yan went straight for his target. He continued to travel southward. On the way, he passed by many cities. Only after 10 days did he gradually slow down his speed. Traveling was also a kind of cultivation method. Xiao Yan's continuous traveling for 10 days had perfectly demonstrated this point. After 10 days of non-stop cultivation, the Do Qi in Xiao Yan's body had reached a saturation point. At this saturation point, even if he were to refine it with a heavenly flame, it would not be able to compress it in the slightest. This was also the sign that Xiao Yan's strength was about to break through to the middle stage of the 6-star half-martial emperor realm. Only at this moment did Xiao Yan, who was traveling, stop. He descended on top of a mountain peak. Without any hesitation, he sat down cross-legged on top of the mountain peak. Hoo-hoo! After taking a deep breath, Xiao Yan inspected his body with his consciousness. Sure enough, the Do Qi in the vortex space had reached a state of being completely filled. If Xiao Yan were to make a breakthrough at this time and increase his strength to the middle stage of the 6-star half-martial emperor realm, it would simply be a matter of time. Xiao Yan would naturally not let go of this opportunity so easily. He smiled in his heart and immediately withdrew his consciousness. The instant he opened his eyes, he flicked his finger. A black ray of light immediately shot out and turned into the Northern King before Xiao Yan. During this period of time, Xiao Yan needed peace and quiet the most. If he were to be disturbed during this period of time, his breakthrough might end in failure. This was not something that Xiao Yan was willing to see. After taking out the Northern King, Xiao Yan could not help but frown slightly. He still felt uneasy in his heart. His eyes turned slightly and a hint of sharpness flashed through them.
Soon after, he waved his sleeve and 3 rays of light shot out. They were placed in 3 different directions in the air by Xiao Yan. Those 3 rays of light were 3 different formation discs. The 3 formation discs were all rank 2 defensive formation discs. The energy emitted from them was sufficient to withstand an all-out attack from a 9-star half-martial emperor. When all 3 formation discs were unleashed, no one below the Do D level would be able to break through them. After doing all this, Xiao Yan calmed down slightly. With a flick of his finger, 3 rays of Do Qi shot out again and instantly entered the 3 formation discs. With the injection of Do Qi, the 3 formation discs immediately emitted a dazzling golden light. The light spread and turned into 3 dense Do Qi light barriers, protecting Xiao Yan within them. Soon after, Xiao Yan withdrew his consciousness and slowly closed his eyes. The breathing in his nose gradually became stable and orderly. 2 hours later, when the aura within Xiao Yan's body had completely recovered to its peak, with a thought, the flame mantra in his body began to circulate. The enormous amount of Do Qi within the vortex space also began to roll over and over. Wave after wave of Do Qi surged out from the vortex space. Immediately, they separated like a river, turning into a couple of even smaller Do Qi that flowed into those Qi paths following the circulation of the flame mantra Qi method. At the same time, in the outside world, the instant the flame mantra Qi method in Xiao Yan's body began to circulate, the space around Xiao Yan's body began to fluctuate intensely. Waves of scorching hot energy that was filled with a wild and violent intent also appeared to be attracted at this moment and swiftly agglomerated from the empty space. They were like numerous crimson-red fire snakes that coiled around Xiao Yan's body a couple of times. After which, following Xiao Yan's breathing, they gradually entered Xiao Yan's body. When these mottled energies entered Xiao Yan's body, the beautiful heavenly flame immediately pounced on them like a hungry wolf that had seen a wild rabbit. Before the mottled Do Qi could resist, it had already been refined into threads of pure Do Qi in the blink of an eye. After passing through the refinement of the heavenly flame, they poured into the Qi paths in Xiao Yan's body. Following the Do Qi in the Qi paths and being refined by the flame mantra Qi method, they followed the route of the flame mantra Qi method and finally entered the vortex space. Under this repeated refinement, Xiao Yan's aura gradually grew at an extremely slow speed. While Xiao Yan was slowly training, time swiftly flowed by like sand between one's fingers. In the blink of an eye, 1 month had already passed. Currently, there were only 2 months left until the opening of the desolate ancient remains. As time flowed by, it also caused Xiao Yan's body to gradually undergo changes. Every time he advanced, there would be a small change in his body. The direct manifestation of this change was that every aspect of Xiao Yan's body would receive a different degree of improvement. Regardless of whether it was his Qi paths, his bones, the strength of his physical body, the density of his Do Qi, or the changes within the vortex space, every aspect of his body was becoming stronger and stronger. Following the change in the aura within Xiao Yan's body, the spatial fluctuations in the empty space around him became increasingly intense. Circular ripples that were like water waves continuously surged outwards until finally, it completely returned to calmness. This kind of calmness was not the kind that one could see with one's naked eyes. Instead, it was a kind of vibration that was difficult to detect under the extremely intense fluctuations. At the same time, crimson-red Do Qi continuously surged out from the empty space between the heavens and the earth. The crimson-red energy was like a substance as it fiercely burned around Xiao Yan's body. Xiao Yan was like a phoenix in the fire. When he broke through, would it be the nirvana of the phoenix? At that time, under the unceasing swallowing and refining of the flame mantra Qi method within Xiao Yan's body, this long period of refinement continued for close to 10 days. It was only at noon on the 9th day that Xiao Yan, who was under the scorching sun, suddenly opened his eyes. As the last thread of Do Qi in his body entered the vortex, Xiao Yan's aura immediately soared to a new level. After an instant, the Do Qi that was about to leak out from Xiao Yan's body was completely withdrawn back into his body in that short instant. Not even the slightest bit of it leaked out. After a couple of breaths, Xiao Yan finally forcefully endured the abundant Do Qi within his body. His body trembled slightly as he violently inhaled a breath of air. Immediately following this, Xiao Yan abruptly raised his head. The expression on his face swiftly became wild. He widened his mouth and emitted a long roar that shook the heavens and the earth. Ha! After the long roar was emitted, Xiao Yan's body suddenly trembled. His feet ferociously stomped on the peak of the cliff below him. In an instant, An enormous force poured down and caused the cliff to collapse. As for Xiao Yan's body, he borrowed the force and, like a bolt of lightning, instantly broke through the clouds and stepped onto the 9 heavens. After close to a month and a half of unceasing training, Xiao Yan's strength had finally obtained another breakthrough. He had successfully entered the middle stage of the 6-star half-martial emperor realm.
Chapter 603.
Hoo! Xiao Yan stood proudly in the sky. He had a fanatical expression on his face. He clenched his fists and sensed the surging Do Qi within his body. After a long time, Xiao Yan's state of mind gradually stabilized. Is this the power of a mid-stage 6-star half-martial emperor? Indeed, compared to an early-stage 6-star half-martial emperor, there is a huge difference. Xiao Yan muttered softly. He could not help but exclaim in admiration. Compared to an early-stage 6-star half-martial emperor, there was indeed a huge difference between a mid-stage 6-star half-martial emperor and an early-stage 6-star half-martial emperor. As the saying goes, the slightest mistake could lead to a difference of 1,000 miles. Even though the difference in strength between an early-stage 6-star half-martial emperor and a mid-stage 6-star half-martial emperor was only a single step, the gap between them was like a chasm. If an ordinary early-stage 6-star half-martial emperor were to rely solely on cultivation, and without the use of any external items, it would likely be impossible for them to increase their strength to mid-stage 6-star half-martial emperor without several years or even several tens of years. If one were to use time to measure the difference between the two, it would not be an exaggeration to say that it would take 100 years. Of course, it had only been half a year since Xiao Yan had broken through to the early-stage 6-star half-martial emperor. In half a year's time, he had broken through from a 5-star half-martial emperor to a mid-stage 6-star half-martial emperor. Such a frightening cultivation speed could be said to be heaven-defying. One must know that if an ordinary person wanted to break through from the mid-stage 5-star half-martial emperor to the mid-stage 6-star half-martial emperor, it would likely take them at least 100 years. However, the current Xiao Yan had indeed only used half a year's time to break through from the mid-stage 5-star half-martial emperor to the mid-stage 6-star half-martial emperor. Such a frightening cultivation speed was simply something that no one could compare to.
Hee boy, not bad.
In less than half a year's time, you've managed to break through from the middle stage 5-star half-martial emperor to the middle stage 6-star half-martial emperor. With your cultivation speed, even if you were to be placed among the peak powers of the continent, you would likely be ranked at the top. The empty space beside Xiao Yan distorted slightly before Gu Yu's figure gradually appeared. He looked at Xiao Yan with a mocking smile. His old eyes, which contained a glint, involuntarily revealed a surprised expression. Even he had never imagined that Xiao Yan would be able to break through from the middle stage 5-star half-martial emperor to the middle stage 6-star half-martial emperor in merely half a year's time.
This was truly shocking. Haha, old Gu, please don't make fun of me. I know my own limits.
Compared to those people that you have mentioned, the strength that I obtained by relying on external objects has a somewhat opportunistic feeling.
Otherwise, how could I possibly raise my cultivation by so much within half a year's time?
Xiao Yan shook his head after hearing Gu Yu's words.
His face sighed as he spoke.
He knew very well how he obtained his current cultivation. Even though he might be a rare exceptional genius in the eyes of others, in his own eyes, he had merely relied on external objects to reach his current level of cultivation. This was not merely because he had broken through from the 5th-star half-martial emperor to the 6th-star half-martial emperor. After all, on the path that Xiao Yan had walked, exactly how much of his strength and cultivation had been obtained through his own cultivation? Almost none. By relying on all sorts of opportunities and the flame mantra martial technique that he had cultivated, Xiao Yan had always been searching for all sorts of powerful heavenly flames. Perhaps in the eyes of others, heavenly flames were the most tyrannical and ferocious power in this world. However, to Xiao Yan, they were the source of his strength, the foundation of his cultivation. It could be said that without heavenly flames, he, Xiao Yan, would not have been able to reach his current level of cultivation.
Humph, brat. There is no need for you to belittle yourself. That's right, practically all of the strength that you possess right now is obtained through external help. Even your mid-stage 6-star half-martial emperor cultivation was bestowed to you by that woman called Lang Bingshuang. Gu Yu seemed to have seen through Xiao Yan's thoughts. He coldly snorted to express his dissatisfaction with Xiao Yan's dispirited attitude. At the same time, the words that came out of his mouth were also provoking Xiao Yan. However, you should not forget just how much pain you had to go through when you swallowed the heavenly flames to obtain your strength. That degree of pain is enough to turn an ordinary person into ashes. Yet,
You were able to endure it and obtain a transformation. This is already sufficient to prove yourself. As long as your efforts are proportional to your returns, nothing else is important. Gu Yu stared at Xiao Yan in front of him as he spoke in a solemn tone. At the same time, the expression on Xiao Yan's face was volatile as he repeatedly thought about Gu Yu's words in his heart. The method you use to obtain strength is indeed a shortcut. However, at the same time, isn't the pain and danger that you have to endure also a few times or even dozens of times that of others? In this entire world, has there ever been anyone who had put themselves in a dangerous situation because of purely practicing Do Qi? I'm afraid that there is no one else other than you who practices the flame mantra. The emotions on Xiao Yan's face gradually stabilized after hearing Gu Yu's words. A determined expression flashed across his eyes. Indeed, Gu Yu's words were not false. One's efforts and returns must be proportional. Even the members of those large aristocratic families had to rely on the resources of their clan in order to train at such a fast speed. As for Xiao Yan, he was alone in the outside world. He needed to think of a way to obtain everything. Xiao Yan did not have the so-called training resources. He was only searching for ways to raise his strength. Compared to the members of those clans, Xiao Yan's strength was even more difficult to obtain. Ha ha! Xiao Yan involuntarily laughed softly when he thought of this. The distracting thoughts in his heart were tossed aside, and his emotions returned to normal. His condition had once again recovered to its peak. Ha ha, old Gu, relax. I understand what you have said. There is no true right or wrong on the path of training. Ultimately, only the strong can control the truth in this world. It seems that I have thought too much. As long as I am worthy of my strength, I will not regret it. No one will delve into the origin of my strength. Gu Yu nodded. His old face revealed a gratified smile. In this world, strength was respected. Without strength, one was even less than a pile of dog shit. At the very least, no one would dare to step on dog shit. Let's go. We will talk after reaching our destination. The opening of the desolate ancient remains is imminent. It is likely that quite a number of experts will gather this time around. This is also a good thing. It will also allow you to broaden your horizons and see the world of an elite Do Di. That level is not something that an ordinary place can compare with. Gu Yu sighed softly. He immediately turned his body, turned into a ray of light, and entered Xiao Yan's body. Xiao Yan nodded solemnly. After meeting a couple of elite Do Di, his heart had become increasingly excited about the so-called Do Di class. He did not know when he would be able to reach that level. A fiery heat involuntarily surged deep within Xiao Yan's eyes when he thought of this. Do Di was a level that could truly be ranked among the experts on the Yuanwu continent. He believed that he would one day reach that level or even go further and become even stronger. However, Xiao Yan could only focus his attention on the present. The path of an expert had to be taken one step at a time. One had to rely on oneself to walk down this path. Chapter 604. Half a month later, in the outskirts of the Shilin mountain range, Xiao Yan had finally arrived at a city that was situated between the Shilin mountain range and the human forces after half a month of arduous travel. Shilin City. This was a city situated between the Shilin mountain range and the human forces. Due to its unique topography, this city was endowed with a liveliness that was different from other places. The scarlet-red city walls were left with conspicuous battle scars. These scars constantly spoke of the city's past, and every once in a while, new scars would appear, constantly renewing the city's future. At this moment, outside Shilin City, a thin figure dressed in black robes was standing in front of the city. Around him, crowds of people came and went, and a nauseating stench of blood permeated the air. Everyone's face was filled with ruthlessness, and every pair of eyes was filled with murderous decisiveness. The stench of blood was emitted from these people. Due to being situated in the outskirts of the Shilin mountain range, the people of Shilin City often came into contact with magical beasts. Here, almost everyone's body would be enveloped by the aura of magical beasts. Xiao Yan's pitch-black eyes stared at the city that rose above the earth like flames. A hint of hope involuntarily flashed across the depths of his eyes. Now that the opening of the desolate ancient ruins was imminent, Shilin City would probably not be peaceful. Sighing softly in his heart, Xiao Yan slightly nodded his head. He lifted his eyes and swept his gaze across the surroundings, and could not help but gently raise his eyebrows. Compared to other places, the people here looked even more ferocious and wild. Almost every man was topless, and their bronze skin reflected a beautiful light under the scorching sun. Their sturdy bodies could be compared to a bear's, and every time their feet landed, it seemed as if the ground beneath their feet would tremble uncontrollably. Even some of the women were equally astonishing. Perhaps due to their years of training and the process of coming into contact with magical beasts, some changes had occurred to their bodies. Of course, these changes were only simple changes in their appearance, but in terms of strength, these people's strength was even more terrifying than those who obtained their strength through normal training. He slowly exhaled and moved his feet. Then, he strode toward the city in front of him. Lying in the middle of the crowd, Xiao Yan looked around curiously. At the same time, the pitch-black soul orb in the depths of his brows trembled slightly. Instantly, boundless soul energy surged out like a tsunami. Under the control of Xiao Yan's mind, it did not attract the attention of others as it rapidly spread towards the city in front of him. After a round of investigation, Xiao Yan, who was walking in the middle of the crowd, could not help but frown slightly. He sighed in his heart. Indeed, it was just as Xiao Yan had guessed. In this small Shilin city, there were hidden dragons and crouching tigers. In this short period of time, Xiao Yan had already discovered a few strong people with strong auras in Shilin City under the investigation of his spiritual strength. Currently, other than the strong people above the Do D level, there was no one else who could make Xiao Yan feel serious. Currently, there was still a month's time before the opening of the desolate ancient ruins. However, Xiao Yan did not expect that so many strong people had already gathered in Shilin City. It was hard to imagine just how many Do D level experts would personally come here in the next month. When the time came, when the desolate ancient ruins opened, it was likely that there would be another fierce battle. However, regarding this, Xiao Yan secretly sneered in his heart. Although many strong people had already gathered here, it was likely that no one would care about a mere 6-star half-emperor like him. Fishing in troubled waters was something that Xiao Yan did not mind at all. After randomly finding a place to stay in the city and resting for a while, Xiao Yan began to stroll around the city. At the same time, he also hoped to try his luck and find the remaining 2 medicinal ingredients that he needed. TSK, have you all heard? 2 months ago, in the headquarters of the Sun Clan in Coldstream City, the Sun Clan's head, Sun Shua, was ruthlessly slapped in the face by that Xiao Yan. He, how could I not have heard of such a big matter? It is said that Xiao Yan is very powerful. With his own strength, he actually beat up all the half-emperors in Coldstream City. TSK, how terrifying. That's right. That guy not only slapped the Sun Clan's head in the face, he also killed many people from the Sun Clan. It is said that because of this, the Sun Clan's head wanted to step forward and stop him. However, who would have thought that he was not a match for him and was actually beaten up by him? TSK, don't tell me that Xiao Yan has already become a Do D level expert? It's hard to say. To be able to beat up a 3-star Do D level expert, who knows if his original strength was that of a Do D level expert? TSK, such a young Do D is really frightening. Suddenly Xiao Yan, who was walking in the middle of the street, unintentionally heard the words being emitted from the mouths of the passers-by. When he heard that the topic of the conversation was the matter that had happened 2 months ago in Coldstream City, Xiao Yan could not help but let out 2 soft coughs in an embarrassed manner. As the saying goes, the matter from 2 months ago had been spread from the mouths of thousands of people until now. However, it had become so miraculous. Forget about the bystanders, even Xiao Yan himself could not help but feel stunned in his heart when he heard it. After skipping over the few people from earlier, Xiao Yan continued to walk forward. As expected, he heard quite a number of things that were related to him along the way. Those news caused Xiao Yan to be unable to laugh or cry in his heart. In an instant, it seemed that he had really become a Do D level expert in the hearts of everyone. Indeed, it was impossible for an elite Do D to be in existence that a Bandi could contend with in the eyes of these people. As long as such an expert appeared, all Bandi could only bow their heads in front of him. Unfortunately, this so-called bowing their heads was something that Xiao Yan could never hope to achieve from his point of view. When faced with a strong person, Xiao Yan would only become stronger. This was because he knew that he did not have any path of retreat. This was because if he retreated, he would die. At this moment, it was likely that only Xiao Yan himself and those who had personally witnessed everything in Coldstream City back then would know the truth of this matter. Not having the mood to bother, Xiao Yan simply skipped over the people along the way and carefully searched for the 2 medicinal ingredients that he needed. However, at this moment, rumble! A vast and mighty thunder sound was suddenly transmitted over from the distant horizon.
The entire Shilin city began to tremble intensely at this moment. A vast and mighty pressure that nearly caused everyone to be unable to breathe suddenly rose in this area. At the same time, the expression on Xiao Yan's face suddenly changed drastically at this moment. The spiritual strength that he had released instantly returned to his body. While his eyebrows were tightly knit together, Xiao Yan's body moved. His feet suddenly stomped on the ground.
In the blink of an eye, he was already in the air.
His gaze turned and focused on the distant horizon. Chapter 605.
Rumble. The intense rumbling sound of thunder was like waves of beast roars that reverberated unceasingly across the sky.
In the distant horizon, a black mass of dark clouds gradually spread. Although they were far apart, Xiao Yan was still able to sense the frightening aura that was being emitted from within. Following Xiao Yan's rise into the sky, a few rays of light also instantly flickered from a few other directions within Shilin City. In the blink of an eye, they had also stepped into the empty sky along with Xiao Yan. Xiao Yan's eyes involuntarily narrowed when he saw these few people. A glint swiftly flashed across his eyes. These people were the few elite Dodi who were in Shilin City. They paused their bodies. Numerous pairs of sharp eyes instantly focused on the direction where the thunder came from. At the same time, there were various expressions in the eyes of those few people. The few of them exchanged glances with each other. Finally, their eyes paused for a moment when they looked at Xiao Yan. Immediately, they randomly swept past him. A pair of eyes that were filled with solemnity focused on the distant horizon. This was especially so when they looked at the thunderclouds. Even with the mental fortitude of these few elite Dodi, they could not help but part their mouths. Even someone as strong as a Dodi seemed to be able to feel a sense of fear toward that thundercloud. Xiao Yan frowned slightly. He slowly withdrew his gaze. Only then did he look at the thick thunderclouds on the horizon.
Rumble. The sound of thunder roared. Despite being hundreds of thousands of feet away, the sound of thunder seemed to be reverberating beside one's ear, causing one to feel a chill rise within one's heart.
This is pill lightning? Why is it so frightening? Don't tell me that this is a rank 4 pill lightning or even a rank 5 pill lightning. Xiao Yan's lips and teeth trembled slightly.
The soft words that were emitted from his mouth contained a shock.
This was the first time that he had seen such a frightening thundercloud.
He did not doubt that if that thundercloud were to completely erupt, it was likely that he would not be able to block even one attack.
It was also because of this that Xiao Yan's heart was a little uncertain about this cluster of frightening thundercloud. No, this isn't pill lightning. At this moment, Gu Yu, who had been quiet for a long time within Xiao Yan's body, finally spoke. His voice was filled with a solemn tone.
Clearly, even with his character, he did not dare to underestimate this strange thundercloud that had appeared in the distant sky. Xiao Yan involuntarily felt startled after sensing the slight emotional fluctuation in Gu Yu's words.
He frowned and looked at the thundercloud.
At the same time, he asked Gu Yu in his heart, which was filled with doubt.
Old Gu, what exactly is this thundercloud? Why is the energy contained within it so powerful? That's right. It would be strange if this thing didn't make you feel dangerous. Gu Yu quickly regained his composure.
However, there was a trace of mockery in his tone as he laughed softly at Xiao Yan.
Old Bone knows about that thing? Not only do I know about it, I have even personally experienced it. However, you can relax.
You will have the opportunity to personally experience it in the future.
Gu Yu sighed softly.
He seemed to have recalled some matters in the past and his heart involuntarily trembled.
Old Gu, just tell me directly. What exactly is this thundercloud? What do you mean by what you said earlier? Xiao Yan's brows, which had just relaxed, were once again tightly knitted together. The doubt in his heart grew when he heard Gu Yu's vague reply.
He curled his mouth and involuntarily continued to question Gu Yu.
This is a lightning tribulation.
Gu Yu laughed softly before slowly opening his mouth.
The expression on Xiao Yan's face suddenly stiffened the moment these words were uttered. At the same time, both of his eyes stared intently at the black thundercloud in the distant sky. His heart was in turmoil. The shock he felt was difficult to describe. Lightning tribulation. Just these two words were enough for Xiao Yan to understand why the thundercloud had appeared and what it was used for. Any band D would attract a lightning tribulation when they were about to break through to the Do D class.
That kind of lightning tribulation was so powerful that it could seriously injure an elite Do-D. It could even kill an elite Do-D who was in the midst of a breakthrough. This also explained why there were very few people who could truly break through to the Do-D class despite there being many Band D experts on the continent. Even though some Band D experts had great training talent and could even rely on their own training to reach the Do-D class, there was often a portion of them who would be stopped by this lightning tribulation regardless of how frightening their talent was. The D tribulation had basically become the shackle that prevented most Band D experts from becoming elite Do-D. In front of the D tribulation, regardless of how frightening one's training talent was, one would ultimately be unable to reach the Do-D class as long as one was unable to endure it. It was also because of this reason that a portion of the 9-star Band D were unwilling to break through despite having already reached the limit of breaking through to the Do-D class. The reason was because of this lightning tribulation. If one succeeded under the lightning tribulation, one would be free and unfettered. One would become a true elite Do-D and be respected by others. On the other hand, one would end up in a state of eternal damnation. Not even one's corpse would remain under the lightning tribulation. Looking at this thundercloud, it was obvious that someone was preparing to break through to the Do-D class. Old Goo, although the D tribulation is powerful, can't one find an expert to protect one from the tribulation, just like how one withstands the lightning tribulation? Xiao Yan seemed to have thought of something. He frowned slightly and once again opened his mouth to ask Gu Yu. His tone was filled with doubt. Stinking brat, aren't you treating the D tribulation too lightly? If it was so easy to endure the D tribulation, wouldn't everyone on the continent have become an elite Do-D? Gu Yu involuntarily laughed and scolded Xiao Yan after hearing his words. Gu Yu felt that Xiao Yan's simple-minded thinking was a little laughable. However, Gu Yu recovered his solemn expression soon after. He paused for a moment before opening his mouth to explain to Xiao Yan. Unless one is able to forcefully endure the D tribulation with one's own strength, any external object is useless in front of it. Of course, the D tribulation pill is an exception. There is no need for the old me to explain the reason. You should understand it yourself. Being a medicinal pill, the Emperor Calamity Pill, was merely a method to raise the strength of one who had made a breakthrough. Although the duration was short, it was able to help an elite Do-D resist the lightning calamity. This point was completely different from an ordinary external object. Although they both relied on external objects, the method of swallowing the medicinal pill allowed one's body to become stronger. It was a strength that came from the inside out. It was unlike the former, which completely relied on external forces. It looked impressive on the outside but was weak on the inside.